Welcome back to the Brave Podcast. My name is Angelo, aka Exploring with Angelo on YouTube. Normally I'm out doing ghost hunts and going to strange places and doing all sorts of weird travels around the world. Today we have an amazing special guest who we will get to in a moment. He is a friend of mine that I actually went to high school with. He's into music, spiritualism, all sorts of cool stuff. But first, let me introduce my co-host here. We have Moshi.
Hi, my name is Mohammed, Moshi on YouTube and Instagram and all the good stuff, and I'm excited to have met this gentleman. In the few minutes that we've been speaking, it's already evident that he is a very special person. So today, I would like to introduce you to Michael Onabolu. I hope I didn't butcher that. I'm sorry.
No, you nailed it, bro. Yeah, man. It's nice to meet you.
Welcome,
bro.
Man.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me on, guys. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for joining us. So even before the podcast even started, first of all, we were having some weird technical difficulties. For some reason, whenever it goes to Mo's feed, it looks like he's literally burning in hell.
Yeah, that's what I said.
It'll just start flickering, and it was probably in the previous episode, not the previous episode, but the one before that. I accidentally basically spilled. Yeah, it was with Sebastian.
Mm-hmm.
I accidentally spilled like half a glass of wine on the HDMI switcher.
Oh, shit.
So I think it's like reacting to that. I don't know what the deal is, but it is what it is. But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do. I mean, it's been a long time since we've probably spoken, since high school. But yeah, let everybody know what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Angelo. First of all, I'm wondering if this is like a rice situation, if you should put that in rice.
I was actually thinking about that. I'm like, maybe I should put it in rice, but it was like probably a week ago at this point. And then I looked and I'm like, there's still a little bit of wine on the keys. Like, I don't know, man.
I can take it home and I can open it up and I can clean it. Yeah. I'm good at doing electrical stuff.
I mean, at this point, I mean, it is what it is, right? If we need to buy a new one, we'll buy a new one. But
sure.
So you do music, mainly hip hop. You write music. You have your own studio, you even mentioned, right?
Yeah, so I was just saying that I got a studio in the place, like in the crib, so I can work out of there. Just do, honestly, a little bit of like light tracking, more vocals and stuff like that, but usually actually head to like a studio space to do a lot of like the major recordings. So last project we dropped in December, we did that out of 2 studios. So one was Post Office Sound in Toronto, and another one is Diamond Factory, which is more by like the lakefront in Toronto as well.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So when it comes to music, like, are you doing a lot of recording for other people? Is that what you're doing? Like, you're essentially helping them produce their own music and your own as well?
So I do mostly, like, I do record for like group projects. So for example, there's a group called, it's basically called Song Camp. It's like a Web3 like music community. And so they do these like experiments in music on the edge of like Web3 and sound. Okay. So they'll run these like 8-week camps, 6-week camps where like a bunch of artists from around the world will get together and basically create something for the first time. So we'll meet each other for the first time, create music together for the first time, and then release a collection of music and art and NFTs into the world. So it's pretty cool.
That's so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, man. So I got the chance to do that. And so the third iteration of that project was called Camp Chaos, which is a group I was a part of. And that was a huge successful event. Honestly, just like huge experience for myself personally. And I know for everyone involved, because it was like 77 of us from literally around the world, just like experimenting with different sounds, like everyone's different genres and stuff like that. So that was cool. But predominantly I do a lot of like my own independent stuff where it's like my singles or working with like a group of people. So for example, I started a group called like #The Collective. So it was like 9 artists, you know, different producers, artists, like vocal artists, that sort of thing, just collaborating on works. And I still work with a lot of those guys today. And then outside of that, just like feature stuff. So when I did the project, the Michael Onabulu Ep.8, when I did that was my first time working with a producer, Brandon Brown. And that was a really good experience. But predominantly I work with guys from that #The Collective group. So like Carl Gutowski is like a big guy that I work with. Andrew D'Amato or Azriel and Gradient, a few other artists like that.
That's cool. We have a couple friends ourselves. Scotty Four Eyes. I don't know if you know him.
He sounds familiar.
Yeah, Kojo. You might know him.
Yes.
And Tremaine.
Yeah, Tremaine. Yeah.
Jason.
For sure.
Yeah. Because I noticed you were following a friend of ours, Jibs. So I'm like, oh, how the hell you know Jibs? And then I realized, I'm like, well, you guys probably all met each other through everything that you're doing, right? So what? When did you start like all this, like producing your own music and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I started like writing. So I'm more of like a lyricist. So like I write, I sing, I rap, like record, and then like more performances. On the production side, I'll probably like work with other people who are like more strong on the production, but I'll have input and that sort of thing. So for me, I think like it goes back to, and I know it's like the classic thing. So like back when I was a child.
But these are the best stories. Man.
Yeah,
That's what I want to hear.
Well, okay. Well, honestly, it's truthfully that, right? Like when I first moved to Brampton, midway through grade 3, I was coming from like the east side. So like born in Toronto, lived on the east side, like Scarborough, Ajax, Pickering kind of thing. Moved around a lot as a kid, and then settled down in Brampton. And I didn't really have a ton of friends at first. I was kind of a bit of an outcast. I think it was the weird guy that came from the other side of the province, or the GTA. But
Being weird, we have that in common.
yeah, right. That's why I like your shirt, man. I'm like, I actually love that shirt.
I have to say, today I'm wearing a Super Daddy-O shirt, which I bought for Father's Day, a matching one for my father. Thank you.
I was just watching the Mario, like Super Mario Bros. So like, yeah, it's spot on.
good.
The new movie?
The movie,
How
yeah,
was
yeah.
it?
I'm not done. I got like halfway through and I was like, I gotta go to bed. But I enjoyed it so far.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Is
It
it-
made over $1 billion in theaters.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Billion.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
One day, right?
Maybe you never really know, right? Maybe just invest in some random small company that you never know. Maybe it'll take off one day, right? So you said you started when you were younger.
Yeah.
So right now you're working a full-time job and you're kind of just doing this all on the side. Is it in the plans to kind of hopefully make this full-time one day? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, so like for me, it's always been one of those weird things where even when I was a kid doing it, like writing poetry or rapping and all that kind of stuff, like I kind of looked at it as like, it'd be really, really cool to be able to like connect with the world, right? Like share music, like just kind of like live and share ideas and thoughts through sound. But I don't know that I ever really thought about it as like, I could really, really do this,
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know what I wanted to do after like high school and stuff like that. I kind of just like was like, all right, counting seems good.
Sure.
It was like, we had teachers that were like, oh, it's the language of business. I'm like, I want to learn languages. Like that seems like a good one.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was an accountant. So I was like, all right, that works. So I did do what you're saying actually. So I started out in accounting, in audit, public accounting. And at a certain point I was kind of like, okay, this isn't really like the path that I want to be going down. Like
little too boring.
Yeah, you know what? It was interesting in some ways.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of a nerd in that way where like I like philosophy.
Yeah.
So like whenever it was like very theoretical or like how should we do this? I love that.
Cool.
Yeah.
But when it was like I don't know what to do and I don't know how to find the answer, like that's where I really like I found it difficult, right? Like I'm almost like I don't feel real.
Yeah.
And so I left in 2017 to just like do music like full on.
Nice.
And that's how I met a lot of the collective guys, is because like these were guys that were also kind of in a similar spot. Carl was the first one who like went from music to investment banking back to music.
That's wild,
dude.
So,
Shout out him. Yeah.
Yeah, when you hear stories about people who are like they went to school for a certain thing, and I remember learning this in high school. I don't remember which teacher it was, but there was a certain high school who had mentioned that somebody he knew had gone to school to become a lawyer or something like that, and he did all the lawyer schooling, and then after all of that decided all of a sudden he wanted to go into construction. That's what he really wanted to do. So I mean, by all means, man, all power to you, right? So what do you think it'll really take to make you one day just absolutely, are you kind of waiting for like a moment where you kind of like really take off, or do you kind of have a plan for how you want to make this a full-time thing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the big thing for me at this stage and what I'm doing is like, I want to be very clear on everything, right? Like, I want to know that there's reach, right? Like global reach, to be honest, right? Like the dream is definitely music, and it's definitely like the passion. It's the thing that like drives me. But the thing that's really like, what do I want to be saying in the music, right? It's really about like, how do we kind of shift the way we think about ourselves and the world, right? Like everything we're really doing, right? Like if I think about, I guess myself personally is really all I can speak from, but like I feel so much dissonance a lot of the time, right? Like when I'm like watching something or reading something or like connecting with people and it's like, oh man, yeah, wouldn't that be great? But like, it sucks that it's like this, but it's just what it is, right? Like that sadness, that feeling of like, even if we want to go as far as saying like the human condition, right? Like complete belief systems, right? Like not to say that there isn't a reality of like we struggle against our, our better natures or however you want to put it, but
our inner demons,
our inner demons, you know what I mean? Like we're all trying to like win that, that coming together within ourselves. But like, I guess I just genuinely feel like, we really could make this world the way we want it to be. Like someone came up with the idea of money or hierarchical structures, like not to say those things are bad, they're not necessarily inherently bad themselves, but like if we don't like the way we're operating, like, shift it, you know?
I find like you just said, they're not inherently bad. It's just how they're utilized essentially at the end of the day, whether it's done for good or evil, right? I find a good person with a lot of money is going to do good things. A bad person with a lot of money is going to do bad things. That's just the way it is, right? And yeah, I would agree with your philosophy on that, right? So, which is kind of interesting because we hadn't really seen each other or spoken to each other for like, I don't even know, like basically since high school. Yeah. And like I always knew who you were. I don't know if you knew who I was, but I was also the weird kid with the long hair.
Dude, we were all weird. I'm still weird. I'm wearing a costume on my shirt, and I will wear him proudly.
And I'm a nerd too. Okay, I'm wearing Jurassic Park in this episode.
I'm wearing Super Mario.
Yeah, dude, come on.
This is the Weirdo Club today.
Yeah,
Welcome to the Weirdo Podcast.
Won, right? Like,
oh my god, but yeah, so it's like not talking after so many years, and then recently we were at a friend of ours' birthday party. Yeah. We just had a little bit of a gathering until like, I don't know, 12, 1 o'clock, because we're all old people now, right? So we don't really, like back in the day, we used to stay out until like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, getting drunk and whatever. Now it's like, as all these old dudes, it's like we show up to somebody's house. Mike's he literally brought a gallon of water. That was like the one thing that I remember seeing you doing. I'm like, man, Mike really likes his water, right? I had a couple of beers, whatever, and then everybody, you know, took off. But we were starting to get into like philosophical information and or conversation rather. Yeah. And I was like, man, Mike's really intelligent. Like he thinks outside of the box, right? Which I like, because it's nice, it's refreshing to hear somebody who doesn't just speak the same washed out kind of narrative all the time, right? Where you're talking about things like world peace and like you said, you're trying to express that through your music, which is beautiful. And because a lot of the times, like, people don't see it that way. The way I'm seeing it, especially with the music industry lately, it's just it's been the same crap for years now, right? It's all about, you know, the money, the women, the cars, and this and this and that, and everybody's just, I don't know, it just does nothing for me. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that kind of made me lose interest in listening to a lot of that genre of music, or even any genre that just basically, like, there's nothing here for me. For me, I'm also the type of person that I don't really watch regular TV. And if I am going to watch something to entertain myself, I feel like I need to learn something from it. And if I can't learn something from what I'm watching, I don't want to spend my time watching it, because my extra spare time right now is very, very limited, right? I don't know if anybody else feels maybe the same way. I mean, obviously, you know, you watch the odd Super Mario movie or a DBZ episode or whatever it might be here and there. But for me, it's like, because I spend a lot of time creating content, and obviously now we're doing the podcast, talking to other people, and that's what I like, because I feel like talking to other people, you learn a lot, right? Especially somebody like yourself who's got a very refreshing and different outlook on life. Where I was leading with that, I have no idea, but
I feel that though, right? Yeah. Like I genuinely, so it's interesting you say it too, because I am trying to like slow myself down to a certain extent, right? Where I'm like, okay, like, you know what, let me just watch this just to like chill and not be thinking, or like, you know what I mean?
Sometimes you need to veg out, right?
Yeah. Like I find it hard. Like, I love video games, but I find I bought like 6 in the past month. I played 1 and like barely passed the tutorial. Like, I'm not even.
Can I ask what game?
Yes, it was Cyberpunk. I bought Cyberpunk recently.
Nice. Yeah, not the DLC, the original Cyberpunk from 2020.
Yeah, but it has. I think it has like the added DLC content
just
in
released. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, or maybe it's coming out. Anyway, great game.
But dude, you're telling me, like, I don't know.
Like, I wouldn't know either. So.
Like, so you've played it, right?
I've played maybe 10 hours or something like that.
Okay, so you definitely played much further. Dude, I the night I finally like got the game, right? I like did all the updates to get all the DLCs and whatever, and I played, like, you know, when you get past like the intro like cutscenes or whatever, you may not even remember this because it's so far back in the beginning, but like you get past the intro cutscenes and then it's giving like this tutorial on like, here's how you do some of like the hacks and here's how you shoot and whatever. Yeah, that's where I am.
Nice.
I'm in the tutorial and I was like, I need to pause. I need a break. Just like the Mario movie. Like, I'm like, this is good. This was enjoyable. 20 minutes worked great. Yeah. I'm gonna go sleep now.
Dude, I do literally the same thing. I watch movies now in like segments, like 30-minute segments, and then it's like I have to go do something else, and it's like it's in the back of your mind. You're working on something else, and you're like, damn, that was a really good movie. I really want to finish it. Yeah. I just don't have time, so I'll watch another 30 minutes tomorrow, and then another 30 minutes after. And the problem is, by the third day, you completely forgot what the first hour was about, and you're like, damn, now I need to restart the whole movie again.
Yeah, dude, is that like, you know, like how everyone's like, oh, I got ADHD or whatever. Like, is that what, I don't know if it's because like, and it sounds like you have a similar thing where it's like, okay, I feel like there's so many more things I need to do with my time. Do you know what I mean? So you're never quite like fully relaxing. Yeah. Or if it's like my attention span just isn't there.
I don't think it's, for me, it's, I know it's not attention span. That's right. I find myself very hyper focused on things when I'm working on something very specific. For me, it's just a matter of being efficient with my time and productive, because there's only so much time in a day. So I kind of have to like plan out certain things. So I'll try and hammer out the most, I'll put priority things first. I'll hammer out all the high priority things first. And then later on, if it's like, I know I got to make like a stupid phone call to like, I don't know, the bank or something that's not super important, I'll always put that at the bottom of the list, because if I can't get to it today, then I'll just do it tomorrow. As long as I know that it's, you know, not a hypersensitive thing that I need to get done today, right? So I just find that's kind of like how I do things, right? I'm very scheduled and structured for the most part, right? Like when we schedule guests for these nights, we try and obviously focus and, you know, we got somebody on Monday, one person on Wednesday, and then we have another person on Friday, because then I also know that I got to go and film my main channel videos, which for me is my bread and butter right now. So yeah, that's just kind of how I do things, how I operate for the most part.
See, I get that. Right? Yeah. I'm pretty similar, right? Like trying to balance like going back to what you were saying before, right? Like when I switched into just doing music, I found that to be some of the most exhilarating time in my life. Right? I did that for like 2 years, and I did like odd jobs and stuff, met a bunch of people who were also down and like formed the collective and stuff like that. And it was like living a movie. Like it was like, this is exactly where I wanted to be. You know what I mean? Nice. Like, dude, we were doing like tent rental setups. I was doing like security type jobs, right? So like I'm literally living like outdoors or like in a club at night, right? And like everything had some sort of relation to like events or like music. We would go to a buddy's like house and like record out of the studio there. We would like, you know, we'd be pitching on gas, like get to the studio. Like it was very like, we're just trying to make it, you know, we're doing shows. Like people are interested in like, yo, what is this thing? What's the collective? You know what I mean? It was very like, cool. This feels like a vibe. You know what I mean?
Wow. And that's, for me, that's kind of how success is born essentially, because what you focus on grows, and you need to be absolutely obsessed to the point where it's almost sickening if you actually really, really want to get something done, right? And that's what I've kind of been doing with YouTube. People notice that I upload extreme amounts of quantity, probably almost more than majority of other YouTubers at the end of the day. And it's like, for me, I'm just absolutely obsessed, because it's like I know where I want to be, and I like doing it, right? Like you said, it's like, man, this is really where I want to be, right? I have a really cool opportunity to do something different, whether it's with the podcast or my other channels or whatever it might be. But it's just how I kind of operate, like I said, right? I come from a background of entrepreneurial style business, where I've always kind of worked for myself, literally ever since I was like 14, 15 years old. I remember when I was younger, I thought I was a really good artist, like sketch artist. I really wasn't, but I would.
You might have been lit. You never know.
I don't know. I don't have any examples to show you. I probably got rid of all of them a long time ago. But I just remember when I was really, really young. We're talking like probably 10. And I would sketch whatever Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z characters, whatever I decided I wanted to do. I would just copy the picture on another piece of paper. And I think I started doing it because I was seeing some of my friends who were really good at it. So I'm like, oh, well, that looks pretty cool. Maybe I should try doing that and see if I'm actually capable of drawing a Charmander or something, right? So I would draw these little sketches on a piece of paper. And whenever a family member would come over, I would go and try and hustle them for $1 or $2 to sell him my photo, right? And a lot of times they feel bad because like you're a little kid, like asking them for money. And at least you're offering something of value, right? That's the way I saw it. And then at some point during high school, I sold bootleg DVDs.
Oh, shit.
I think a lot of people probably did that stuff back in the day.
But still,
my bestseller was Saw #2, just because it was lit at the time, and ever since then, I did like computer repairs, and I started getting into selling things, buying wholesale, selling online, that sort of thing. And then there's a whole bunch of business stuff that I did before that, and that kind of geared me, I guess you could say, for where I am today, where it's like I kind of operate as if this is almost a business. Obviously, it's fun. There's content that's being created for the viewer, but at the same time, you got to kind of treat it like a business at the same time. I feel like that's the same thing with music. It's like, yeah, it's all fun, and you're out there partying and having a good time, meeting all these great people, and you might get some groupies at the end of the night, but you got to treat it kind of like a business, right? So,
but see, and to your point, right? Like, I definitely feel more like that now, where like during that period where it was like I was doing more so music and like odd jobs, right? Like I definitely had a similar sense of like, got to do the business, got to do the art, but it definitely felt like a lot more like fun, like just kind of like flying by the seat of your pants. Like who knows where it's gonna go? Like we're barely making anything, but like we're just putting it all on the line. You know, it definitely took an emotional toll. And where I am now, like I've got a bit more of a lot more of a balance, right? In terms of like a 9-to-5 that's like stable, but also like flexible, and it's kind of more suited to like my personality, like doing like more tech sales, that kind of thing, right? And also being very open about like, you know, who I am and like what I'm about, right? Like I went into the interview being like, hey, I've been making music for the past 2 years. I was in like, you know, public accounting before that, which is so random. But you know, I'd love to do this, like, cause I feel like I could be really good at this, and I'd love to be around people again, like spend more time in that kind of a fashion, but also still make music. And they were like, that's really cool. Right. And so I felt like that was a good fit. But what I'm noticing is like, now I'm a lot, like, I definitely feel like a lot more structured in terms of like, hey, now that I've got this, right, like the time I have outside of work has got to be very, very calculated, right? And like everything I'm doing, to your point, right, like if I'm watching this TV show, I'm thinking like, shit, I got like, can I say that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
We already
like,
passed like the first 20
did
minutes.
we?
So
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, cool.
I might have to cut out the first one just so we don't get like demonetized.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Whatever. It's
My
all good.
apologies.
It happens, dude. I honestly, on this podcast, I probably swear the most. So.
Okay, cool. But like just that reality of like thinking like every minute has to kind of be accounted for, or like there's more things to do. And where I am right now is like, I am trying to like take it a little bit easier on myself, like still do the things and like still have that in mind. But like, how do I kind of enjoy it? Cause I feel like part of my process and like where I'm at musically, where I'm at like personally, you know, mentally, spiritually, whatever you want to call it, like physically, even like, I feel like the best stuff for me, like when it comes to music or when it comes to like living, is like when it's in that like joy flow state. You know what I mean? Like where it's like, dude, I'm actually just having so much fun. I'm not thinking about where do I got to be, you know, in an hour from now or 2 hours from now, or like, yo, if I'm watching this, like I'm going to be tired tomorrow or whatever. Like obviously we consider those things, and you're right? Like, you know, people get older, but even when I was younger, I would think about some of this stuff. But like the reality is like, if I'm thinking about all these things, it's hard for me to get present. Right. Like, and I'm trying to get to that place where I'm like, okay, like, let me just be in the moment, have fun with it. Like I was telling you earlier, like I got that show, not this Friday, but next Friday.
Yeah.
And I was freaking out, right? Cause I'm like, okay, this is like biggest venue I've played, you know what I mean? Like 400 people capacity, like super, super exciting stuff. Right. And like a lot of people supporting, like a lot of exciting opportunity. And so in my mind, I'm like, we gotta pack the room. We gotta like make sure the owners need to know that we're grinding. I need to be giving them updates. Like I need to be outside. Like I had a QR code that I was like offering to people in the streets just to scan it and get the details of the info. Like I'm stressing, right? And one of my coworkers, great woman, Gail, she saw me in the office. She's like, hey, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, just freaking out about this thing, whatever, but I want it to go well. And she just kind of looked at me. She's like, don't stress, right? Like just, you know, it's gonna be good. Just have fun. And honestly, I appreciated her energy so much because the way she looked at me more than what she said was very like, this seems like you're doing it backwards. You know what I mean? Like this thing is supposed to be fun. You know what I mean? Like, why are you freaking out? Like whatever it is, it's gonna be cool, right? You know what I mean? And I feel that every time. Like every time I'm going into anything, I'm like, it needs to be perfect. You know? Versus like, let's go do this and have fun. Like, am I enjoying it? You know what I mean? So I'm trying to calm down, which is hard because you want the drive to be successful and reach the goals and hit the audience and make people feel it. Do they enjoy it? Are they having fun? But the more I'm obsessing about, are you having fun? It's like, I can't, because you're not fun right now. You know, I'm not fun right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm trying to get better at that.
Yeah, I feel like that too. And I think that was my hurdle too when I first started on like YouTube and stuff like that, because I didn't really know what avenue I wanted to take. I didn't really know what type of content I wanted to do, and it was horrible. Like, I was just making really stupid vlogs that just didn't make any sense whatsoever. And then looking back later, I'm like, why did I even make these? Like, these are not entertaining, right? But I was like trying to kind of figure out, like, cycle through and getting ideas from other people and seeing how everybody else kind of does what they do. And then I kind of realized, I'm like, I just need to be myself on camera, be authentic, genuine. And I feel like that's what people appreciate the most, right? They like seeing you having fun, right? And I felt like once I started doing that, especially with like my vlogs, like I love making the haunted stuff and all that stuff. That stuff's a little bit more serious. But when I go to the vlog channel, I feel like that sometimes is my best work, because for me, I like doing kind of travel type of vlogs. Yeah. And I like showing things to people that they may never have an opportunity to see through my lens, right? Yeah. And then also obviously have my own input, my own opinion, and what my experiences might be like in a certain area, right? So it's like, for me, I love going to Savannah, Georgia, and I feel like it's beautiful. I love going to Charleston, South Carolina, like these really old cities that have a lot of history, good history, bad history, whatever it is. But it's beautiful, right? And I love kind of showing people the beauty of it, because I appreciate it and I want them to appreciate it. So I work so hard to create those types of videos so that way they can see it the way I see it. Yeah. Right? And I feel like that. And I feel like that's my best work at the same time. Kind of like what you're saying is like when you're less stressed and you're actually like really enjoying what it is that you're working on or whatever you're doing, is when you're going to create the best work. Right.
100%.
Yeah.
That's how freestyles work.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, one question for you.
Sure.
I think we were talking before. What is your opinion? There's a TikToker named Harry Mack.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned you know who he is. What's your opinion on that guy?
Dude is incredible. Like, he's exceptional.
He's good, right?
He's great. It's interesting too, because I think about Harry Mack, you know, and just along the lines of what you're saying too, about like some of the early stuff you did and where you're at now, and like what you guys are doing with the podcast. Like, I look at that stuff as like iteration, right? Like, just like kind of like, I'm going to try it and I'm just going to, you know, learn from what I just did and do something else, right? Do it again. And to me, like, you know, so sometimes I'll get in like these things where people will be like, oh, like, you rap, like, do you want to freestyle? I'm like, sure, let's do it, right? Because I don't mind, right? But I feel like that's because I've done it so many times. Do you know what I mean? And like, even sometimes I'll feel a little bit of like, okay, I feel like, you know, I want it to be great, right? But I'm kind of at a place where, because of the iteration, I'm like, even if it doesn't start exactly how I want it to, like, just keep going. It's going to get to where I want it to get to, right? And that for me is like such a confidence building thing, but also like becomes fun, where it's like, okay, let me challenge it, let me play with it, whatever. And so when I see Harry Mack, like, to me, he's the 10,000 hours, right? Like, he's really just that tipping point, right? Where he's really just like gotten to a place where he's so comfortable with himself, with his art, with his ability to like let the words slide off his tongue, right? Like, don't have to think. He just trusts himself, and then he can pick up with anyone or anything. And you know what I mean? Like, that to me is like the epitome of like, you know, you're just having fun with it. You're just in your element. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that's the beauty of like Harry Mack, is that like he's carved his lane from just like putting in the time, putting in the hours. Like, he used to be on like Ogle, I think. What's that?
Omegle?
Oh, yeah, Omegle, right? Like, and he would just be like, you know, someone would come on and
he'd ask for the 3 words.
The 3 words,
so basically, for those of you guys that have no idea who the hell Harry Mack is, basically he's a rapper, and like Michael was saying, he usually goes onto Omegle, finds random people to talk to, and they're like, hey man, nice studio, like, that's pretty cool. He's like, yeah, that's all right. And he's like, yeah man, just I'll freestyle for you, just give me 3 words off the top of your head. And they would just come up with like the stupidest word like that you could possibly think of, and somehow he would make it work, right? Like, that's brilliant. Like, if your mind is moving that fast to create that many sentences that quickly, like, I can speak pretty decently quick at times, but I mean, I admire people who can manage to freestyle that quickly and make it actually function and make sense at the same time, right? So
for sure. Well, I think it's also like getting over oneself, right? Like for me, I've seen it so many times where myself, I felt this like a ton, where it's like, okay, like I'm not going to step into this cipher, into this like battle or whatever in high school, like those high school days, right?
Yeah.
Because it was like, these guys are so good. I don't want to embarrass myself, right? I don't want to say something that's like, that didn't go anywhere or whatever, right? But when I did get into like more of the ciphers, I was like, okay, these guys are a little bit safer, right? Like I can kind of, you know, like test the waters or what have you, right? I started to realize like, dude, it's really just, it's just practice, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
And I feel like he put himself in these positions where it was like, if I fall flat on my face, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll just keep doing it. And then eventually it's like, okay, I can do this.
I mean, realistically, I'm sure there's probably some videos he's got lying around where he just completely screwed up. Maybe he had to start over again. And the world's not going to know that because he's the only one recording it, right? Yeah. So if that's the case, then you don't have to show the rest of the world. It just makes you look like you're perfect every single time. But
I wouldn't even, the personality that I've seen from him, like I don't know him, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, dude, watch these bloopers. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I think it's a very humbling thing, right? Like you, when you get to that, or at least in my experience, feeling like I've gotten to a place where it's like, oh, I'm better at this now, or like I can do this. You know what I mean? And then someone else being like, wow, that's so cool, you can do that. The first thing I want to say is like, you can do it too. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I see it so many times where people are like, oh, I can't freestyle. I'm like, no, just say anything. Like, let it go and say anything. And seeing people go from that place of like complete fear and like not wanting to do it to like, okay, I said some stuff that was weird, but like it was kind of fun, and then like leaning into it and like trying it more and more and then getting better. Do you know what I mean? It's such a like, I guess that's why teachers love teaching, right? But like it's such an empowering feeling that like you feel good for them, right? Like you're just like, I'm so happy you tried it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so like that to me is it. Like I feel like anything in life is really just like try it, and if it doesn't work, iterate. You know what I mean? Do it again, try it again. You know what I mean? Just keep getting up. Yeah.
I feel like that too.
I feel better just listening to you. I feel like I'm learning so much just sitting across from you. Like,
this is why I wanted to bring him on, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's like I said, there's a lot of refreshing points of views, and as we bring more and more people onto the podcast, you guys are going to learn a lot from a lot of different people, right? So, so in terms of music, what kind of like, what do you find sets you apart from the rest? If there's something specific that you are able to point out, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. Like, it's funny. I was just thinking about this on the drive up here, not specific to like music, but just so like it's an odd
just
comparison.
In general, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd love to answer it like in relation to music too, though. But like it's kind of like an odd comparison because I do find like there are interesting parallels between like selling software like day to day and trying to make music, right? Like it's kind of a grit. Like you're owning it. Whatever happens is on you, right? Like if you make it to your goal or not. And one of the things I was thinking about, because my director was asking me a question where it was just like, how do you kind of like look at competition, right? And I'm like, I try my best to not like even whether it's like in my team, right, where it's like, hey, like who's doing really well, who's having a bit of a harder time, or like across like other competing softwares or whatever. Like my perspective going into sales, because I wasn't really comfortable with the idea, to be honest, like entirely with the concept of sales. You know, people always give it a bad rap, right? But for me, I was like, I want to be myself and see if that works, right? And I feel like it does. Like just kind of thinking about like, I want to keep as much integrity. I want to be integral. Like I want to have my integrity. I want to be ethical, but I also just want to come from a place of like, I actually think this will help you. Do you know what I mean? Like I actually feel like there's value here. If there's some sort of issue, I'll talk it through with you. If you trust me, like I promise to honor that trust. Like I want to do my best to just like keep it 100, right? Like, oh, this might not work, or you need this to make it work. Let's do it, right? And so all that's to say, like, I try my best not to think about competition as much, right? Like just think about like, what do I feel like I'm doing that I think would have value for you, right? Yeah. And so in that way with music, like I genuinely feel like I just try to do my thing. So like the message of like, hey, like how do we evolve? Like how do we really just shift our consciousness in a way where it's like, if we feel there's like an incongruence with the way that we feel life should be and the way life is, like realizing that we can adjust that, because we're technically we're accepting what it is, right? Like we have at any point, like we could go, okay, let's pause this thing, like get enough momentum and just go like, hey, let's maybe try and talk through a shift. It doesn't mean that we know the answer right now, but we can iterate it, right? If we're really not happy with this, like let's try and plan for what could be good, try that. If it doesn't work, cool, let's keep going, right? But like kind of get over ourselves, right? Like just give ourselves the chance to fail and try again.
I guess evolve,
right? And so same with the music. Like I try to put that message in the music. Like I have a song called Katana, which is all about like just the concept of free will, and like there's more options than like, red or blue or zeros and one. Like I appreciate binary and I understand how it's an interesting model. It's a useful model at times, but like if we maybe gave ourselves the opportunity to look at other options, we might be surprised at what we could do, right? Even if we don't know what those options are right now, right? And so with music, I try to think about it that way, where it's like, I just know that I have this that I want to share, so I want to share that. And if other people are sharing that, cool. Like, we're interested in hearing that, right? I have some friends actually who do have a similar kind of message, and I really like their music. And then the other thing is just sharing who I am, right? Like, so vulnerably, like, here's how I feel on things. Here's like relationships that I've gone through that were really tough or that were really good. Here's like, experiences that I've had, or here's emotions that I'm dealing with right now, or, like, here's what I'm thinking about the future, about the past, or whatever it is. So like, just trying my best to authentically share who I am as a form of expression, but also the ideas that I think, really resonate deeply that I'd love to see, at least love to put them out there and try to work towards if people also resonate with them.
That's really cool.
Thanks, man.
That's awesome. You don't see that a lot in the music industry.
Thanks,
I don't know. Anyway, I don't.
Yeah, I feel like
I appreciate that.
Over a long period of time now, it's kind of been this trajectory. Like, I feel like music up until like maybe the 90s really had a lot of heart, right? Like, when it came to hip hop, you had a lot of people like, Biggie and Tupac that kind of shared different concepts in music that wasn't just the standard norm that it is today. And that goes for rock music and all sorts of other different, it was based on like certain topics about certain feelings, where certain things that might have been happening around the world or society or whatever it might have been, whether it was political or something like that, right? And it's kind of shifted into this very, what's the word for it? It's just music has become very generic, right? Nobody cares about the lyrics anymore. And this is something that I kind of hate about TV shows, for example, like American Idol. I like it for the entertainment factor, but how I feel about TV shows like that is that it's great that these people can sing and they have amazing voices and whatever. But the question is can they write a good song? Because that's what I care about. Like, I used to do music too. Like, I have literally my old, that was actually my second guitar growing up. I don't play it anymore, so I put it up there. And I always had this major appreciation for music and what the lyrics in a song would actually mean. Like, I would listen to a song. I remember when I was younger, I would listen to a song and I would go on the internet afterwards and be like, lyric meanings or whatever. And I was always constantly trying to figure out, like, what did he mean by this? Right? Like, what is this supposed to mean? Right? And I was always kind of like, there's obviously a lot of depth, right? It's kind of like when you're reading the Bible, right? You can't take it for what it literally says, but you're reading between the lines because it could mean multiple things, right? Sort of like what you're saying, right? Things sometimes have multiple meanings. Like, certain words can mean different things depending on how you put them together. Yeah. And that's just my view on music. And it's kind of nice to see that there are people popping up that want to create music that actually has a lot more depth to it than just how he can spit a rhyme or how fast he can rap. It's like, that stuff's great, but that's kind of like the American Idol thing that I'm talking about, where it's like somebody can sing really well, but they can't write a goddamn song for at all, right? Like, so that's just how I kind of feel about that. I don't know what your take is on it.
Yeah, no, dude, I totally appreciate where you're coming from with that too, right? And I think you're speaking to some similar, Mo. Like, I feel like, so you've made so many really interesting points. Like I was recently thinking about Tupac and Biggie, actually. Again, like, very divine timing.
Legendary, right?
Dude, well, you know what it was? I was scrolling on Instagram as we do, and I saw like a clip of him on like a talk show, right? And he was kind of speaking to like his experience growing up like in his neighborhood, and the struggle of like experiencing like police brutality and stuff like that. And like they were trying to say, well, hey, like, police have to police that area, like that's really tough for them, you know what I mean? And I was like, that's a fair point. And he's like, yeah, but we live there, it's really tough for us, you know what I mean? And I was like, that's a fair point too, right? And I just thought it was really interesting because, not to get into the political of it, but just that he was doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it made me think about, like,
he was talking about real shit.
Yeah,
that's what he was trying to bring up. He's like, this is what my life looks like, right?
And on a talk show with a panel. Do you know what I mean? Like, and maybe this is just a different format. Like, that was maybe, you know what I mean? But I just it made me think about, like, dude, like, Tupac wasn't really just like, yes, he was making music, and some of it was just like, you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting because when I think about Tupac, I often think about like Machiavelli, one of his latter albums before he passed, right? And or the last album before he passed, and
You mean before he left for Cuba?
right, exactly, right?
I don't know. I'm sorry, but I love conspiracy theories. So,
well, see, that's the thing. I don't know what happened, right? I wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, I appreciate the fact that he was doing stuff like that. But what I remember also is like, you know, he was really upset at the industry and made some crazy diss songs. You know what I mean? A whole project and I was like, okay, so same guy did that, right? And like, what I appreciate of that is that he was just very much like spilling his heart, right? Like, you know, if I'm upset, this is it. If I'm this or that, this is it. You know what I mean? But the fact that he was saying these things to this level where he's speaking on like political issues or speaking on like, well, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that we could do better, right? Like, not to say he's a perfect person. I don't think, you know what I mean? We're all just trying to make it. And that's where I think like being appreciative of the fact that like, at least for me, I'm human. Like, if I'm upset at something someone else does, like I can appreciate that they're human, but there might still be good things, right? And not trying to judge it. But like, I guess ultimately what I'm trying to say is like, when I saw that video, I just kind of thought about like the level of appreciation of what Tupac was doing just kind of hit different in that moment. Just watching that this was on like public, like this was cable TV, you know what I mean? Like he was on TV speaking about like present day issues that we still face, right? And I just think that's a very unique thing in terms of how he approached music and how he approached his status as an artist and what he felt was meant to represent, right? And what he represented, right? And so like if you can, not to contrast, if we look at today's, you know, music scene, I do still feel like there are people who come with that like kind of energy.
100%. They try anyway.
They try, right? And I think like it's just kind of sometimes when we think about like just surface level, like, you know, the typical concepts that we might hear, like, yeah, those are there, right? And to be honest, sometimes I enjoy them, right? Like sometimes they're just like, it's fun. The beat's fun. The way they said that was fun. Like it's cool to kind of just zone out. But I do also appreciate, like, for example, and it's often cliche to say it, but like Kendrick, right? Like his last project, I genuinely feel like the man wrote 100 essays on the album, right? Like that will be picked apart for centuries, right? And it was very deep. There was so much in there. Like he's talking about family trauma. He's literally spilling his heart on like growing up with aunts and uncles and different people in his life that, you know, were of different sexual orientations. And like he's going deep. Do you know what I mean? And like every song has some unique twist like that, right? Like where he's just, you could tell he spent a lot of time writing each song, right? But I don't know that that's getting the same play as, do you know what I mean? Something that's a little more entertaining and easy to digest, right? Because even for me, when I heard the album the first time, I was like, cool, I'm going to sit on that for a while. Like I can't go back and listen to that right now. You know what I mean? So
because it affected you?
Well, because it's a lot to digest. It's just very dense and rich content. You know what I mean? Like it's very like, I don't know if I want to have to sit through my thoughts again after hearing that. You know what I mean? Like I find it very hard to listen to something like that and not have to be introspective and not have to think about, you know, dude, like that was real. You know what I mean? Like how do I feel? You know what I mean? And so I guess all I'm trying to say is like, I do think it's there. I do think that these artists exist, but I think in a time where, you know, like sometimes it's like quick sound bites or, you know, like what's kind of entertaining, like, cause part of the role is entertainment,
whatever's
right?
trendy, right?
Yeah. Right. Like sometimes we just want to have fun on this stuff. Right. And I think it's being able to balance those things. Right. And like give people a chance to kind of like be free in the music, but also times where it's like, okay, like I actually do want to think about something and hear some lyrics that make me ponder a little bit, you know? But yeah, I appreciate that in the past, we definitely had, I think that was a little more pop to do that, right? Like Tupac was really cool. Linkin Park to me, like Minutes to Midnight makes me cry. Do you know what I mean? Like that project makes me cry because I'm like, when they get to like talking about like, you know, like the impact of 9/11 and like you know, like what's the name of that song? But like it's such a powerful project in terms of talking about like, you know what I mean? Like, how are we looking at the world? Like, you know, making a certain group of people terrorists. Like, is this really the path we want to go down? Like, are we actually doing this the right way? Like, the depth and richness of the content really makes me cry. You know what I mean? And so, do I see that as much these days? Maybe, you know, because we have so much, maybe it's not as often. But there are times where I'm like, nope, that hits me too in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Things are. I find like for me, I like music that's very thought provoking.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the way I am, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, what in terms of like, because we've been talking about like Tupac and Kendrick and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Who influence it? Whether it's a music artist or maybe people in your life, who influences your music the most? Like maybe your style, maybe how you like to write your lyrics.
Yeah.
What would you say?
That's a good question. Man, okay. So I guess okay, personally who influences me the most, I would probably say like it's weird because I know it's gonna sound so stupid and cliche, but like just generally life. Like I really do like to try and meditate or like take from what I'm feeling or what I'm struggling to feel or acknowledge within myself and put it on paper. So a lot of times when I'm writing songs, I'm kind of writing to myself.
Nice.
Like I'm actually like when I'm listening back to the song or I'm reading back the lyrics or even once it's recorded, that's a whole other thing where I'm like, oh shit, this is what I'm dealing with. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it surprised me. I really noticed it in university, like working on stuff in university where, you know, I'd done a song. I ran for like student union president in university and I made like a campaign song. And so like I put this all out. It was kind of talking about some mental health experiences that I'd had earlier in my years in university. And so I kind of wrote a whole song about it just as part of like my campaign speech and also wanted to talk about mental health as like a topic. And when I won as president, like I remember listening back to the song and like reading back like my campaign like platform. And I was like, this sounds like a cry for help. Like, dude, I went through that whole thing thinking like, dude, I'm trying to help people, whatever. And then I read my platform and I'm like, dude, I'm just lamenting on things that are triggering for me, right? And like the song that I wrote like is very much like almost like a promise to myself to try. You know what I mean? I want to try for other people, but I also want to try for myself. You know what I mean? So that's very much what I feel a lot of times with my music, where it's like I'll be writing something and I'm thinking I'm saying one thing and it's there, right? To your point on the ambiguity of lyrics, right? Like it's there, but then, you know, looking back at it, I might be like, oh shit, like I'm also seeing this in myself or hearing this in like how I'm viewing this relationship or this experience of life or whatever it is that I'm still trying to navigate through, whether it's in my subconscious or whatnot. So yeah. So a lot of times like I kind of just lean into that now. In the shower, like this last project, there's like a bunch of lyrics that literally just came in the shower that I was like, perfect, this actually belongs here. I didn't know that at the time, but now that I'm hearing the beat, this is what that's for.
I feel like sometimes the best thoughts come in the shower.
Oh yeah, dude. Shower Thoughts is a great Twitter account if you don't follow.
I think I've seen that account before. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's so funny. But yeah, no shit. Like literally, you'll just be there, just doing your thing, and all of a sudden, oh shit.
Yeah.
That's like a really good idea. And then by the time you get out of the shower, sometimes you forget.
I leave my phone there and I'll just make voice notes. Like I'll hop out the shower, make this voice note and go back in.
I don't like bringing my phone in the shower. I don't know why. I feel like shower time is kind of just like
sacred.
Break time.
Yeah.
Right? It's sacred. Exactly. Right? It's sacred. You're just kind of like, you just need that 10 minutes because all you hear is the water running and you hear nothing else in the house. And
that's why the thoughts are coming at that time.
Yes,
that's what it is.
Exactly.
You're turning, especially if you're deciding to like turn off your mind and like relax.
Right?
That's when that stuff comes. That's why a lot of people will have these ideas while they're sleeping. They wake up and they're like, oh, and they got to write down on their notepad.
Oh, that's the worst, dude. When you're about to go to sleep and you're like trying to fall asleep and you think of something, you're like, damn. Or it's like something that you know you need to do tomorrow. And then it's like, oh man, I don't want to get up and like have to put it in my schedule. And then of course by morning time, you just completely forget.
It's
right?
So, alpha brainwave state, right? Like it's literally like it's that period before you just like fall asleep or just when you're waking up. But it's interesting you say that because I was talking to someone about that recently where I always hear about like executives or CEOs who would take like 30 minutes in their calendar and be like, yeah, no calls. Like it's time for me to like meditate or like plan, like strategize where we're going, like the vision setting time. And I feel like, I don't know if people still do that. Like maybe executives do. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? But like, I feel like we could all, like I personally, I could benefit from that.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? Because
I feel like for me, I feel like people need to take more vacations. I think people don't take enough vacation time, and a vacation could mean whatever you like it to be, right? That could be you locking yourself in a room for 3 days, right? And just literally just chill in there, just watching maybe Netflix or whatever, just reading books, whatever that might be. For me personally, I like going and lying on the beach, right? True. So I could literally lie on the beach for a week straight. I'll put my phone in my bag on vibrate, and then people are getting mad at me because they're calling me and I'm not answering. And I'm like, yo, like, you know, I'm vacationing, right? But I feel like that's kind of like the most refreshing thing for me. Or just like, you know, traveling somewhere. Like next week I'm gonna go to Alberta, for example, with Anthony and a couple other people. And for me, it's like I wanted how I want to treat that trip is sort of like a vacation time. Like I don't want to have to worry about, you know, filming so many main channel videos. I'll just do vlogs because they're fun, and sometimes they're just easy to film because it's just our day-to-day stuff, right? And that's just, I feel like more people need to take vacation time. And I know sometimes it's hard for some people because of, you know, financial reasons or time constraints or whatever it might be. But people need that time off. Otherwise you lose it. You literally start to feel like you're losing it. Like you're stressed, your heart's constantly racing, you feel anxious, you're panicking. And it's just like, you just need that moment of peace.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, okay, just stop thinking about work and everything you're trying to get done, and just take that moment, whether even if it's just a couple hours. Like I know people personally, like, you know, my friend Yasko, well, you know of him, right? The dude works like a freaking dog, right? And people will complain when he goes on vacation, and even when he meets up with me somewhere and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna chill in the pool for a day, right? He doesn't even stay in the pool for a day. He'll literally go for half an hour and then he's like, okay, time to go off to work, right? And I'm like, dude, like you need to chill out. Like you know when you can see a person and they're just like, you can tell they're stressed, they're constantly tired, and it's like, dude, you have to chill, man. You don't need to kill yourself. It's not worth it at the end of the day. You can't take the money with you when you die, right? You're better off just spending it all, or even just setting it on fire if you have to at this point, right? Like who cares? Give it to a charity. It doesn't matter, right? So that's just kind of where I'm at in life at this point.
I relate to that though, right? Like I first of all, I relate to the guy that needs to take the break.
Yeah, I feel that, man.
Yeah,
Shit.
I do too.
Yeah, well, right? Like, yo, dude, I relate to what you're saying. I think the big thing that I really liked in I like everything you were just saying there, but something that struck me was like, even like friends and family, right? When you're like, hey, I'm on vacation, like that's why you can't reach me.
Yeah.
I find it hard enough to disconnect from like work, like both sales and music, like, you know what I mean? Like just like, you know, I'm not going to respond to this. Like that'll weigh on me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like, even when I'm on vacation, I'm still responding to emails, right? But I don't even think about like setting like a vacation response to like family,
out of
friends.
office message.
Yeah, social media and all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm just the worst offender. Like I will just not respond, right? I'll go dark because my brain or my conscience is going like, I can't right now. You know what I mean? I need to take the break.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, who cares? Like I'll catch up with it later on. Like it can't possibly be that big of an emergency, right? That I need to absolutely respond at this very moment, right? Like give me like 4 hours or something, right? And I'll scroll through after those 4 hours of just, you know, turning my brain off for a little bit, because you need that rest. Otherwise, I even find like it'll affect your work, right? Where you feel too tired, and you're especially being in an environment where you need to be creative, right? When you're doing music, I do YouTube, you need to be able to be creative sometimes on how to construct a certain video, whether it's like, for me, it's like putting certain cinematics where they need to be, or making some sort of documentary type of video, or whatever it might be. You need that rest in order to reset your brain, so that way you can keep being creative. Because if you don't do that, you end up burning out. And I've seen it so many times where so many artists in any field really end up burning out, and they just lose it, or they just they start to get into this mode where it's like, you did a lot of really great stuff in the beginning, and you maybe had a couple of things that did pretty good, but then all of a sudden you got to the point where you just kept grinding and grinding with no breaks whatsoever, and you've kind of burnt out, and now you're just kind of coasting. But your business at the end of the day is going to take a hit on that, right? So take the damn break and reset your mind, so that way you can keep being creative and making cool stuff, right? So
I feel like that's like the self-mastery, right? Like setting the boundaries. Because like, I think it's one thing, at least to speak from like for me, just kind of like disappearing for a bit, where I'm like, I know I'm consciously like avoiding Instagram, or I'm avoiding this or that thing, because I'm like, okay, I know I have a ton of messages to get back to. That's one thing. Whereas being proactive, like, you know, I will be away for the next 2 weeks. So like, you know, even though it may seem weird, like I will not be talking on social, like to friends and family as well as like, you know, whatever else it is that are like professional responsibilities.
Only message me if it's an emergency, right?
Yeah. Like setting those kinds of boundaries, I think is healthy and like proactively. So it's like, hey, don't be surprised that I don't get back to you in the next like week or so. You know what I mean? Versus like doing it in a way that for me feels more like avoidant and like I feel like very guilty or self-conscious about it. Cause I feel like being able to be like, hey, I'm going to turn off and I'm going to set a time where I'm coming back feels just very responsible or whatever. But it feels very like, okay, like I'm justified in like taking the time to lie on the beach or go to the park or, you know what I mean? Whatever it is that I want to do to like kind of just have my own time.
Watch 20 minutes of a movie.
Watch 20 minutes. Finish watching Super Mario, right? Like
finish eventually, right?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay, cool. So I guess in terms of music, so how many performances, like live shows, would you say you've done over the span of the last few years since you started? Essentially, how many would you say you've done so far?
Oh, dude, that's a good question. So I'd say I started like full, like, so I guess when I quit like PwC is when I would say that I really went all in. So I did a show 2017 that year. So I did a show in 2017 that year. I did a show in 2017, 2 shows in 2018, and then COVID. So I did a bunch of like virtual performances. We did like one for when George Floyd passed. There was like a group in Peel that asked us to like perform for like a visual thing. So we did that. Did a bunch of like virtual stuff. So there's a bunch of like community stuff that kind of formed over COVID. So I did a bunch of those kinds of things. Post COVID, I did this show in February. So it's been about 3 shows. So I organized one last summer. We called it like the 416 show. It was actually like, you know, Mike and friends kind of thing. But we had like a bunch of we got a bunch of DJs, got a bunch of artists. And there was a venue called Zane's. It's like a fashion clothing store near Trinity Bellwoods in Toronto. And they've got this really cool backyard behind the store. So you've got to kind of know that it's there, right? But we sold a bunch of tickets. We got like beer sponsored, food catered, and all this kind of stuff. So if you bought a ticket for the show, you also got like free food and free beer and stuff like that. And so that went really, really well. So we organized that. I performed for that. And then I did a show in February for the launch of the project. And we got the other one coming up in December.
Nice. So it sounds like things are starting to come together and they're picking up.
Yeah. I mean, those are shows that I've organized, but I often will do a lot of stuff, especially around like the Web3 community stuff. So like I did a show in Distillery last summer as well. Did a bunch of performances for like different events in Toronto and stuff like that. So I've actually got another show on the 28th, 2 days before my actual show. So like I look at the ones that I organize myself as more like my independent shows, and then obviously it can, you know, if someone asks me to come out and perform, I do that fairly often too.
Yeah, that's cool. When it comes to performing, do you have any pre-performance rituals? Like, is there anything specific that that you like to do before the show that kind of like mentally prepares you?
Yeah, for sure. deep breaths.
But like, are we talking like pregnancy breaths? Like,
you know what? You know what? So shout out James Nestor on the book Breath, but like, I focus on the exhale. So something I read in that book, because if you focus on really pushing out the exhale, you will automatically inhale harder. So like trying to force yourself to inhale is not as easy, right? So I will focus on a very deep exhale until there's like literally no oxygen, or I guess no carbon dioxide left, right? And then just suck in as much oxygen as possible automatically. So I'll do that. I'll pray, to be honest, like, 'cause it's just God help me. And then I usually will like recite my lyrics, just make sure I like my like crisp. Nice. But yeah, that's usually my approach. And then just like psych up, right? Like try and get a little more amped. But yeah.
Do you do that thing where you're like moving around and stuff?
Oh yeah, dude, I'm stretching in the weirdest ways. Like you don't want to see me. It's weird. You know what I mean?
See, that's what I mean. Like, right? So like you have like people like athletes, for example, they have like every athlete kind of has like these weird rituals that they'll do before, whether they play like a hockey game or soccer game or something, right? For me, I don't really do anything like before my show. I play really loud music, right? In the car, like if I'm driving somewhere, I need to pump myself. I'm going to like a haunted location, I need to pump myself up. I'll have like the like Slipknot cranked to like 35 or something, right? And it's like by the time I get there, I can't even hear anymore because I'm just deafened by the music. And then before I do this show, I just drink as much coffee as my bladder will will hold, and then I enjoy some wine to kind of diffuse that a little bit throughout the show, right? But I just know everybody's kind of got like this different thing, like whether if they perform something, they do have like a different ritual, right? So everybody does something different.
Dude, I make these weird concoctions. So like I'll put like let's say it's like ginseng tea or whatever with like B12 and like, you know, I don't know, make a crazy smoothie or whatever. And then I'll take like the longest shower of life. And then it's like the craziest stretches. So I'll like, I don't think I've ever said this to anyone, but like,
oh, here we go.
You gotta get some exclusives here.
It's weird, man. I hope your viewers are fine. Okay.
Yeah.
I will be in the mirror, just like thrusting at myself. It's weird, right? But it's because like, it's kind of like, it's kind of like an energy build.
Hang on a second. So when you're saying thrusting, like what do you
like my pelvis is rocking. Like
nice.
Okay, I get it.
The reason is I also actually have like a weird posture thing. Like I think it's like ulterior. I forget what the like official definition or term for it is, but like my pelvis kind of like
anterior pelvic tilt.
That's exactly it. You know what it is, right? So
we
because
got Dr. Moshi over
I just say
here.
tint. I just said tint. I meant tilt.
Thank you. Exactly. So like my pelvis, and I've noticed that it impacts my performances. Like it impacts my ability to sing, access breath, all those kinds of things.
Your
right?
diaphragm is shortened or
exactly,
something. Right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm trying to loosen it. Right. And so it does sound weird. And it sounds like this weird thing. Like, why are you doing that? Like, but it's nothing like sexual. It's literally just because I'm trying to loosen my hips and my pelvis because I need my diaphragm to function properly. Right.
Yeah.
And so what I often do, and this again is weird, but when I'm recording or performing, I'm actually flexing like my glutes and my thighs. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to force my hips up. Right.
Wow,
so that I can actually access my diaphragm and I notice it. I notice that I have way more lung capacity. My notes hit the register, like it all hits more accurately, right? So I try to loosen it up before I get on stage. And then when I'm on stage, I like feel like, you know, I need to make sure that that's working well. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you found that.
Yeah.
How did you come across, like, how were you finding that like you felt a certain way in your hips?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I notice it when I'm on camera too. Again, weird stuff, but like I will feel very uncomfortable standing, right?
Okay.
And it's because I almost feel like I'm in an awkward position, but it's because my posture isn't there. So then if I flex that way and like I can get my hips level, I all of a sudden feel fine to stand straight. But if I'm not doing that, I almost want to like slouch or lean or, you know what I mean? I feel like I can't catch my breath, like all those kinds of weird things, right? And so, yeah. And then for me, like singing, again, to me is iteration, right? Like, and I know that I've been better at other times where I've been healthier, right? And stuff like that, where like I feel like my posture was better because I was more active and stuff like that, right? So noticing that, like, I try to like move my body in different ways and then try singing again, right? And so like it's all these like little micro iterations that have built up over time that kind of give me a sense of if I want to do my best work, I need to be in this kind of like state or shape or whatever. So like before shows, I'll often book like a bunch of like fitness classes, right? Like there's a spin class, yoga. I do a lot of yoga and stuff before shows, just to like make sure I'm limber and like I can get the most out of my capacity, like out of my body and mind, spirit. Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize like how much performing, like when I used to do music back in the day, I mean, I was in a band, played guitar, so it was like a lot of moving, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of, you know, it was part of the whole show, right? Actually putting on the performance. People don't realize like it kicks your ass.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
So especially if you're doing like consecutive different shows or events or whatever you're doing. Yeah. And it's a lot on the body. So
I lose a lot of weight. Like after a show, I will notice that I've like lost time because it's a lot, especially if you're like, for me, when I'm doing like more like my own shows, like I'm usually going through a lot more catalog of my work, right? And so to do like 10 songs back to back or 7 or whatever it is, right? Like it takes a lot of lung capacity. And if I don't practice and build up before getting there, it's going to be very hard to do it. Right. And so, I find it's a lot. Like, for example, we were shooting a video, like a music video last night. And, my buddy who was videographer, like he was just like, no, we need more energy from you. Right. And so I was like, all right, let's give her, like, let's just push belt out this song. And it was funny. I found that more tiring then like when I work out, I usually have like a sauna suit on, which is like, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like those huge like sweatsuits,
I
right?
recently learned what those were. Yeah.
Yeah. Not everyone thinks they're a good idea.
No.
And I understand that.
Yeah, probably not.
They're not the greatest, man. It's tough, right?
Yeah.
But I was doing like cardio in a sauna suit, right? So I was on the treadmill or whatever, and then like a workout after. And I was pretty beat. Like I was like, that was hard, right? Doing like performing the song, like with like a ton of movement, a ton of like expression and all that, was way harder than anything I'd done in the gym recently. Do you know what I mean? And I will do like heavy weights and cardio in the same like session, right? So for me, I actually find like expression to be the way in which to really feel like animated, right? And like feel alive. And so like I need to go through iterations or practice rounds of that before like my body actually catches up to what I'm capable of, right? Because the first few are kind of like warming up, right? And so like, yeah, anyway, I was very out of breath in the first like hour or whatever. But then once I was warmed up, you know, I'm sweating a bit, like now I've got all the energy and I'm like, it looks like I'm juiced, like all my veins are popping and I'm ready to go.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So
man.
we're talking about videos, making videos. So do you have a vision of, you've made a few music videos, I think.
Yeah.
Do you have a vision of kind of like what you want? Okay, so say for example, you're writing the song.
Right.
Do you know what you want the whole end product to look like? Do you have an album in mind? I want the whole thing to look like this, a video to look like this way.
Yeah.
What do you have? Is there a planning process from beginning to end? Do you kind of let, what's the word? Do you kind of let it just hit you, you know, and roll with that? What's your process?
Both those things happen. Yeah, for sure. So like, for example, we recently dropped like this EP, right? So it's called like the I Am Michael Onabulu EP. And
I saw that on Spotify. Yeah.
Hey, thanks, brother. Yeah. And like, so that was, so how that came together is like, I used to go by the artist name I Am, right? Dropped a bunch of projects under that artist name and like singles and stuff like that. And then I went through like kind of like a personal journey, you know, spiritual journey, and just like kind of want to like reclaim my name. And so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go by Michael Onabolu. And I wanted to bridge like that old artist sound, that old artist page with like my new stuff. So kind of like this project being that bridge. But that idea of like creating that came more spontaneously because, and this is such a long story, but like to kind of tell a long story shortly, we had done a song when I used to go by I Am called Booth, right? Which was again like a lyric that came from like the shower that, you know, Carl, who was producing at the time, like, or still produces, but was producing that in that particular single. You know, I went to the studio after being in the shower and I was like, oh, I was just hearing this lyric in the shower. He's like, hey, record it. I recorded it, but a month or two later, he's like, hey, remember that recording you did? Sent me a beat that had that recording embedded in the chorus. I was like, that's so cool. So we turned that song into Booth, and it was just kind of reflecting on like, you know, who am I when I'm alone, whatever. Fast forward a few years and I'm with my partner and we're kind of just talking about things, and it made me think about like just being a kid again, and, you know, like kind of often feeling like, you know, do I have my own thoughts that are independent of what other people are thinking, or, you know what I mean? Am I oftentimes trying to like fit in or whatever it is, right? Whatever we were talking about obviously had me very deep in my feelings. So I started writing like a note to myself on this very concept. Like, do I really do things for me, or am I always just thinking about like what other people might want, or, you know what I mean? And I started to kind of like tear up a little bit, right? Because it was just a very deep moment. A week or two later, a friend of a friend introduced me to a guy, which ended up being Brandon. And he was like, hey, come to my studio. The studio I ended up going to was the first studio I went to after, like, you know, when I was leaving PwC to go into music. And that was because my brother he was going to that studio at the time and it brought me there. And it's called Diamond Factory. And so when I walk into the studio space and I see Diamond Factory on the wall, I'm like, dude, is this the same like Sunny Diamond studio? He's like, yeah, he's coming by later on. I'm like, that's crazy. I haven't been here in 3 years. I used to go to the old location. And then he goes, no, it's really cool, man. He's like, hey, I've been working on something for you. He hits play and the beat sounds like what I felt like whatever I was writing a couple weeks ago needed to sound like. Cause I was like, this should be a follow-up to that song, whatever. Wow. So like, it just felt very divine timing, right? Like where I was like, hey, this guy that I'm just meeting, I didn't know where he was taking me. He takes me to a studio that I hadn't been to in 3 years. And that was the studio that kind of like kicked things off in a way. And he's working on a sound that sounds exactly like what feels right for this song. And so this is our first time meeting. We had a 3-hour recording session. I spent 2.5 hours just writing the song while he's playing the beat on a loop and like kind of tweaking it a little bit. And he's like, hey, man, you should probably just hop in the booth so we have something, like even if it's a demo, because I got some other people coming in after. I go in the recording studio, in the booth, and I lay down the vocals in the last half hour, and he's like, come out here. And I'm like, all right. He's like, what you did in there, like there's something here, right? And like, this is a guy who works with tons of artists in the city. Like, I was really appreciative. Like this is the same studio that Roy Woods came out of. Like a lot of major artists have come through the studio. So I'm like, okay, like for this guy to be like, you've got something, I was like, I appreciate really that. You know what I mean? Cool. Yeah. And so he's like, we need to do a project. And I was like, that's sick. So that ended up being what this was, right? But how it all came together was very like, just, spur of the moment, divine time. Like it all just kind of fit and felt right. It wasn't like I had that vision initially, but then as we did each song, it just kind of built itself out to the point where he's like, hey, you should do this. Or, hey, let's get some interludes, right? So now we're incorporating people who introduced us. We're incorporating like my parents, my partner. Like it's just kind of telling a whole story in this project, right? Of who am I, right? And so like going to your question, like there are times where I have a whole plan in my mind. Like before we were working on that project, Carl, Andrew, and a few of us have been working on this project called the One Day album, which again came from a spur of a moment in 2015 where, we're watching like the Jays in the World Series and stuff. And I'm just kind of thinking about like, man, it's so cool that we made it here. And I'm thinking about my own, what I wanted to do with music, where I was still kind of in this place of accounting. And I'm like, I always said I wanted to do this one day. Like I always said I wanted to do this thing that's like my dream. And it hit me for whatever reason in that moment that like, today is one day. Like there's no such date as one day other than like the present moment, right? And that for me was very like pivotal. And so I wanted to make a project that kind of reflected that of like, I always said I would do this one day and today is one day. So we wrote the whole track list, started recording a bunch of songs, but I just kept feeling like it wasn't hitting the way I wanted it to. And so I wanted to do some projects leading up to that album. And this ended up being one of the projects that we dropped. So we just dropped that in December, and we've been working on visuals for all the songs. So like the video you saw on the website and stuff like that, it's part of like a trilogy telling like a story. So like 09 is a single of like, my life in 2009 and where I thought I was at and where I thought I was going, and kind of like the bumps along the way, and like still being like, hey, I still want to make it somewhere. Like I still want to make it to where I believe in. The next video is going to be like, it's actually booth 2, but it's like the present of like reflecting on the past, but also like where are we going and where are we now? And then the third video in the trilogy is Life is Long, a project from the album, which is basically about like, we always knew it was going to take a lot of time to get here, but like we're enjoying the ride as we go kind of thing. And
nice.
Yeah, there's other videos in the works too, but it's definitely organic. It's definitely leaving room for like just whatever might come and whatever might happen, but also kind of like taking those seeds and being like, where could we go with it? And like dreaming and having fun with it and trying to weave a story and being structured in that way.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Thanks, man.
Like you said, I feel like it's sort of like it's like sequels.
Yeah,
like every video. That's kind of what I like about the idea of what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
Of how everything's kind of, it's telling a story as you're living it.
Yeah.
You live a moment in your life, and then that's what influences you to create a song, which creates your next music video.
Exactly.
Which is like really amazing. Like I've seen quite a few artists who've done stuff like that, and to me, it's like that's what really hits home, right? And it could be in any genre, really, right? Like both Moshi and I are big fans of like, certain hardcore rock type of bands or metal bands or whatever it is, like Slipknot, for example.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like every album that they ever wrote, and to a lot of other people, it's just a lot of, what are you listening to? It just sounds like they're screaming the whole time.
Just a lot of noise.
Right? Like they're just so angry, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, the first album they were pissed off at something, right?
Yeah.
And then you find out that Corey Taylor was actually just very pissed off at his dad the entire fucking time. And then later on kind of things transitioned, and then finally you end up with The Great Chapter, which ended up being about one of their bandmates who ended up passing away, right? And like that's what influenced the entire album, and that's kind of like part of the trilogy of the whole band story collectively, because they were like, what were they, 9 members or something like that? 9 members plus the manager for some reason was also in the poster. I don't know why, but something like that. But yeah, that's, I mean, just to use as an example from what I could think of off the top of my head, just tell kind of like a consecutive story of, this album was about this segment of my life, that album was that. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Can I ask, so just looking at your Instagram, the latest post here, you've got your show coming up in a couple weeks, on Friday, June 30th.
Thanks,
at Casa Mezcal.
Yeah, shout out Casa Mezcal. Yeah, King and John. Yeah.
So you've got, it says visual launch party.
Yeah.
And the image is beautiful. I don't know if you can pull
Thanks,
it up,
bro.
but it looks really nice. What is, okay, so outside of just your showcasing your music here, what's a visual launch party? Because it says that you're going to be literally, that very first one.
Okay.
Yeah, you're premiering brand new visuals for the project. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So it's what I was sharing about like the video sequels and stuff. So what we wanted to do with this one, because we did like a album launch party in February. Thanks, bro. Yeah, so we did like an album launch party in February.
So this is in Toronto, right?
This is in Toronto.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So it's King and John Street, right downtown.
Hopefully, I think this episode will probably be up on like midweek next week or something. So if you guys are in Toronto and you want to go and check out a cool show or, go have some fun downtown, feel free to go check it out.
Friday, June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
I would attend, but unfortunately I'll be in, you said it's Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately I'll already be in Alberta, so unfortunately I cannot do that.
No, I appreciate that.
But otherwise I'd come.
No, I appreciate it. I knew we were taking, it's going to be a risk, right? Because it's Canada Day long weekend. And, like, people will be going away. Yeah. But I just thought it was cool. When I was telling you, like, I used to go by I Am, like the first project I dropped as I Am was called like Canada Days because we dropped it on like July 1st. Nice. So I thought it would be kind of cool to like have some of the stuff from there represented on this show and kind of like make it a full circle kind of event. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the distinction with this one is like we did the album launch party in February where we went through the project. We had a whole story. Like we had there's a group called 777 Overcoming. They're like fashion designers. We incorporated like their fashion pieces into part of telling the story. Is almost like concept art, like dramatic art, right? So like it's part of like the showpiece. And so for this one, we wanted to do something that kind of tied in the videos that we're launching with the project. And so the cool thing about this venue, and we had this in the last one where we had like a mini projector up. So like as I'm performing, there's like projections of like memories and stuff. Cause like obviously this product talks a lot about like, where we've been, where we're going and stuff. Right. And so with this new venue, they've got like a projector that's like built into the space. Nice. So it's like a massive projector that covers the whole one wall, and then I'd be performing on the other wall. So as we go through some of the songs, we want to project the new visuals or like visuals that we recently released as part of the performance of the song. So like as I'm performing, you can also like watch the visuals live.
That's so cool.
Thanks, dude. I'm super excited for it too, because the cool thing is like, we launched 09, that video, but that song isn't on the project. It's like a single that came before the project, but it was a good way to tee up like some of the stuff that gets into the content of the project. And so Booth 2 visuals that we've been working on for a while now, for a little bit, that'll probably be launched at that show. Originally, we were going to launch the third part of the trilogy, which is Life is Long, at that show, but it's probably not going to probably come afterwards. Yeah. But a really, really cool and exciting thing is that, and there's an interesting story here, but like my girlfriend's younger brother, so he's actually graduating next week. Shout out to him. Nice. Going into high school.
Ooh, congratulations.
Yeah, shout out Mark, man.
It will be the best time of your life, I promise. Yeah.
He's excited. Yeah. Like he's looking forward to being done with grade 8. I'm sure we can all relate to that moment and that feeling. But it's cool. Like, so they're all becoming like themselves, right? Like hitting that place where you're like really just carving your path. Mm-hmm. And one of his friends, Elijah, he started like a drone company, like where he's literally like, he has his drone and like he's doing work for like builders and stuff, like capturing like some of the buildings they're doing and stuff like that.
That's cool.
And so he's like, yo, you want to do a music video? And I was like, dude, for sure. Like he's got it's called like High Perspective Films is his company. And so I was like, sure, man. It's like such a cool thing to be able to like work with, someone who's just trying to like build this as like their dream, right? So his mom like drove us around and stuff, going to like different like shoot locations, and we're gonna launch that hopefully at the show as well. So like just like the song that he worked on. Got a couple other videos with other folks that I've worked on that we'll launch at the show too. So we want to make it kind of like immersive art, right? Like I'll be performing, but there's also like the visual element, QR codes, all that kind of stuff. So
that's really cool. And t-shirts, I see.
And t-shirts, yeah, man. I can't forget the t-shirts. Shout out to Sean, Screen Whiz Call. I was talking to him before we got here, but yeah, we got like 100 t-shirts that we printed. That like if you pre-order the t-shirt with a ticket, like it's 2 for 1 kind of pricing, and you can buy them just at the show too and stuff like that. But again, a bunch of people who've really come and supported from that. Like I gotta give a shout out to my buddy Matthew Flute. Like he's like an illustrator for like Penguin House and stuff like that. So he helped with the designs, and yeah, it's cool. Just a lot of community building and a lot of support, which I'm grateful for.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's amazing. What's in terms of religion
Yeah.
when it comes to maybe your life, your music? What kind of impact would you say it has on you, I guess? What church are you part of?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. I appreciate you asking. Massive question, massive impact.
Mhm.
So I'm Christian.
Okay.
And yeah, I'd say it's hard for me in terms of like reconciling all of my feelings all the time.
Mhm.
Just in the sense of like, I'm definitely Christian and I'm definitely grateful for Jesus Christ, right? Like I appreciate just who he is and obviously saving us. The thing that I find hard is the idea that a few people are saved. And I'm not saying this to say anything blasphemous. Like I actually go to Bible study and I'll try to like talk to the pastor and, the different people to kind of also just kind of be real, right? I'm like, hey, like I just, I have these questions, you know what I mean? I want to understand this. But some of my earliest memories of learning about Jesus Christ that I'm really grateful for are just like that concept of the golden rule, like do unto others as you want done unto yourself.
Yeah.
That for me resonated, right? I was like, that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's what I do want to live my life like. So like, shout out Jesus Christ for putting that out there and like support, like, encouraging us to do that. I want to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's who I want to be. So that resonated with me a lot. What I sometimes find challenging is when I, try to read the Bible, like sometimes I'll read certain things that I'm like, okay, I don't know if I resonate with this part as much. You know what I mean? And, I try to, pray and ask for like, hey, help me understand kind of thing. But one of the things I guess I find challenging is one, I am grateful for like all religions in the sense of like, I think there's always something really interesting to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it helps people become good people, like I'd like that. I really appreciate Taoism, right? Or Buddhism, right? Like,
I see you're wearing the Buddha around your neck right now.
Right. You know what I mean? Like I appreciate a lot of religions, right? I appreciate Islam. I appreciate Hinduism, Sikhism, right? Like, so like, I genuinely like, I think I feel an energy more than anything else, right? Yeah.
What, no Scientology?
I do appreciate Scientology. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, look, bro, I genuinely appreciate like anything that's hard to put in words, right? It's just more of a feeling, right? And like anyone who's tried to like put that into words, right? I'm not going to say that maybe it's perfect, but I appreciate that something came from somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And like my personal perspective is like, my personal perspective is the only thing I truly kind of like know is like at one point I kind of just became aware that I'm conscious, right? I know we talked about this a little bit, but like earliest memory, I don't know what age I was, but I just kind of remember, okay, at one point, like maybe I'm staring at a wall or I'm like sitting in like this little toy car or something, but all of a sudden I'm just kind of here, like my mind is aware that I'm here, or I'm aware that I'm here. And then from there, it's kind of like interaction with the world. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? But like, where was I or what was I doing before being aware that I was here? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so if I kind of take that as my starting point, as like, my trying to make sense of the world, or just who am I and like what is this that I'm experiencing, like what is this experience of life, going from that place of like, this is what I know, is that I just kind of like got here. Everything else kind of just seems like, how do I know that's true? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do I know that country is over here in this part of the world? Like, I've never seen it from a top down perspective, you know what I mean? Or how do I know that this person is the person who invented this or invented that? Like, I appreciate that I can trust what people have told me, and at a certain level it's kind of required to make anything work, right? Mm-hmm. But if I'm being honest, right, and going back to like scientific method, which I appreciate, like deductive reasoning, I can see that there are 5 fingers, so that's a little bit easier. Math's a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. But like inductive reasoning, or like just kind of taking things as like, hey, we know that there are, let's say 9 colors or whatever the number is, right? Like, well, how do I know that's all do you know what I mean? Like, what if there's a way to see more, right? Mm-hmm. Or do you know what I mean? Like, there are times where we've updated our understanding of things, right?
Yes.
So all I'm trying to say is like, for myself, when trying to make sense of things, right? Especially because I think I've had experiences that are hard to explain, right? Like things that are often just classified as like mental health. And I appreciate that lens. I appreciate what that is, right? And I'm not discrediting that at all, but just more so saying like, labeling something as like, hey, this was this experience, or you have this, is, I guess, helpful from a generalization or a categorical standpoint, but it doesn't explain what the experience itself was, right? Like maybe it says it from a chemical standpoint, but like as far as like an experience of reality standpoint, where it's like, hey, I had this experience. What does that mean? Like, it means nothing. Okay, well, you're telling me it means nothing, but I don't know that you understand what I'm explaining to you. So like, how do you even know that you're sure it means nothing, right? Or how do I know? Do you know what I mean? So like, I'm getting very meta, but like my whole point is just that when I try to think about religion and going back to that, like, I guess I have a lot of questions, right? Like, and it's not to say that in a bad way or judgmentally, because the truth is I just don't know. Yeah. But if I'm being honest with myself on what I just don't know, it's hard to say that I truly believe this or that. So I say, as much as I'm grateful for all of it, you know what I mean? And I do believe in, like, you know, like I believe in Jesus Christ, right? Yeah. It's just that I also don't know anything. So like, when I try to come back to like thinking for myself and using my volition, it's hard for me to reconcile the idea that there will be a certain number of people that will be saved and everyone else is doomed forever. Like, that to me is weird. You know, like, I'm just kind of like, okay, like, I like everything about like God is love and, you know, let's take care of each other. I get a little bit confused at the idea that, like, even if we're just looking at life as iteration, is there not an iteration where we get it right? You know, where, like, if, you know, maybe reincarnation is incorporated or whatever, like, do we not eventually get to a place where everyone's kind of like, yeah, the thing that makes the most sense is that we be nice to each other. You know what I mean? Or like, we work together, because I feel like that just comes innately. Do you know what I mean? Like, why do I have this feeling then? You know what I mean? And so like, trusting that, because that's kind of all I came in with. Even that I question sometimes. I'm like, why do I have that programming? Like, why do I have this feeling for this response? But at least that's kind of what I came with. So it's weird to me to kind of say, okay, I'm just going to pretend that that's, you know, so still working through it, but generally speaking, Christian.
I feel like when it comes to religion and just life in general, I feel like a lot of people have, you know, obviously a lot of questions about things, and obviously that's just humanity itself, right? The one thing that I am noticing, and it's good about you, it's, I mean, obviously you have a lot of questions and maybe you're still trying to fully understand your faith. Obviously you have faith, but you're still trying to fully understand it, and that's what I appreciate about that. And I like that. What I'm noticing a lot of the times is that society right now is becoming more and more godless, so to say, where they're kind of losing their faith, or maybe they've been brought up in an environment that has no faith. They're very, you know, I feel like the atheist group is growing, and it's almost kind of like creating a chaos, and it's not a good type of chaos at the end of the day, where we're seeing crime increasing in certain areas, maybe because of that ever-growing expansion of atheism, or agnosticism, I guess we could say as well. Agnostic people, I don't really have an issue with agnostic people. I don't even really have an issue with atheist people. I'm just kind of, you know, shooting the shit right now. But when it comes to seeing agnostic people, I feel like
Can I just ask, what is agnostic? So I've heard the word so many times. I don't know.
So agnostic is you believe there is a God. You don't fall in the lines of any certain specific doctrine, so to say. So you don't specifically say, I'm not Catholic, I'm not Buddhist, I'm not Muslim. I believe there is something out there.
Okay, so the person that would say I think there's a higher power,
exactly.
But I'm not.
Exactly. Whatever. But they're still trying to kind of figure out what that higher power is, and they would be defined as agnostic. Their belief system is agnostic, whereas atheist is, you believe there is no God, there is no religion whatsoever.
I've also heard agnostic defined as like, I don't know. But like, you're still trying to like,
but that's part of it. Like you have the idea like there's something out there, and that could even be like, I think maybe aliens rule our planetary system, right? That could be that too, but I think it's more defined as like believing that there's a higher power, which would be, to us, we understand that higher power as God or Jesus Christ or whatever it might be, right? But back to my point is that I just kind of feel like a lot of people, morality, that like when our country kind of started, it was very much God-fearing people, right? So people kind of had a higher sense of morality, and I feel like that's slowly disappearing, and hence the reason why we're ending up with a society that people do not fear consequences anymore. And that's one of the major issues, right? So I feel like even if you are agnostic, for example, you may not, you know, you may not believe in any specific doctrine in general, but you kind of feel like, well, if there is a God out there, I may, if I do X, Y, or Z, I may end up here. I may end up in hell, or I may end up in purgatory, or whatever it might be, right? And I feel like a lot of people nowadays who have no faith whatsoever, they're like, well, there is no God, so I can just go and kill people and I can get away with it because there are no consequences unless another human being catches me and throws me in jail. But that's just kind of where I'm seeing where things have kind of gone nowadays. And I mean, it is what it is. And I even kind of hate saying that too at the end of the day, because like I do strongly very much believe in God. I'm grew up Catholic. Moshi grew up a Muslim. You grew up as a Christian. And I kind of feel like all of our faiths kind of, the general sense of morality amongst all of our faiths kind of fall in line with one another, right? So and I kind of feel like growing up, we were very fortunate, like we both went to the same school. We went to a Catholic school, and we were both very fortunate that we went to a certain Catholic school that instilled a very strong faith amongst people. Taught us how to kind of, at least try to help us understand that faith, where we learn philosophies and learn different world religions and things like that. And I'm seeing a lot of like kids going to public schools, and it's so different, right? Like literally the public school up the street, we were hearing about Harold Brathwaite, and every time I would talk to people that went to this school, they're like, oh yeah, we had like 4 stabbings this year, right? And it's like, our school didn't have that, right? Like we had like there was issue. I'm not saying there wasn't issues, right? We had like weird things happening here and there, but it wasn't like there wasn't 4 stabbings. There was I understand we're going through school. I don't even think we didn't really fear that, right? Like there was. I feel like a lot of the students that went to our school kind of had that because. We were very mixed, right? Like not everybody in our school was actually even Catholic, but we had people from, all aspects of life, whether they were Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Pentecostal, Baptist, it didn't matter, right? And then obviously Catholic was the majority. And then we also even had some people who weren't religious at all, and they were still welcome into the school. But we had this like sense of morality, and I felt like a lot of the students kind of knew that there would be sort of consequences to doing the wrong thing in life, right? So that's why a lot of kids generally in our school didn't really, do shitty, stupid things to each other. There was, few exceptions, but again, there were very few compared to a lot of the other schools that I knew that were in the same vicinity, right? Public schools and whatever it might be. And I don't know. I know there's probably other factors as well involved in that. There's, social political factors involved and a whole myriad of different things. It's not just one simple thing that we can say definitively this is 100% what it was. But I feel like that's kind of one, point to it at the end of the day. But yeah, it's kind of a nice, cool thing that the way you kind of described how faith kind of affects your life.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you're saying that because I don't know. So here's where I'll put it. I feel like there was a period. When would I define it? I'd be hard to put like a date on it. Maybe the 2010s. I don't know. Right, where it was hard to kind of be like, yeah, I'm Christian or I'm any religion, Islamic, like whatever it is. Right. Like I feel like it was almost very uncool or unpopular to say that you kind of like follow a religion. It was almost more like
I felt like that too.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I actually feel like now it's become quite popular for people to be like, I'm Christian or I'm Islamic, like, or Muslim, right? I feel like there's been a renaissance in that, or almost like it's almost similar to like the swing to the right, where people are kind of just very like, no, we should be able to say that. Like, I don't want to say like Xmas, I want to say Christmas, right? Or like just very open about different religious faiths and the celebrations that take place, right? Eid or whatever it is, right? Like, I feel like we've almost become very understanding of that and almost encourage that almost as like the pendulum swing. Like we should own these things, right? And it should be very comfortable to talk about that. What I actually feel, not to say that I don't see what you're saying too, right? Because I think there's also an openness of atheism or agnosticism or whatever it is, right? And
I'm not saying it's wrong by any means.
No, I know.
You're entitled to believe whatever you want to believe, right? Yeah. I'm just saying that's like my opinion, where I see kind of things heading, right?
Yeah. So, and to your point, right? So what I understand you to be hinging on is that just that concept of like morality and consequence, right? And I guess when I think about like some of the things that go on, or a lot of things that go on, to me, it feels almost like dissonance, right? Like a separation between like what I want to be happening and what I almost feel like I don't have control over that's happening, right? So like whether, you know, if I think about someone in a position of power, like, oh, I have no choice, right? Or someone who is part of the populace that feels like I have to go along with it, what I think is an agenda or whatever, I have no choice, right? A sense of like, we don't control our destiny. Like it's preordained, like it's just happening and this is what it is. And like, just wait for it. You know what I mean? That's the part that for me feels odd, right? Like, cause at the end of the day, we are all just doing this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, even if like, first of all, I find it, I don't know if there's like a cabal of people that are controlling every step or whatever. I find that hard to believe. Even if there is, that's fine. If whether there is or isn't, right? Like all I'm also saying is like, I can't, even if I can say, okay, this might seem this way, right? Even from an audit perspective, right? Like using that as a model, like I don't know definitively anything, right? Like even in audit, we would just give an opinion of like, you know, no opinion. That's the best thing you can kind of get, right? But all I'm trying to say is like, because if I want to come from a place of like just trying, you know, if I was in this person's shoes, like how could I see this from like an empathetic, like human almost standpoint? I almost look at it as like just a feeling of like lack of control or like this thing's too big. Do you know what I mean? And I almost feel like there's a sense of, like I said, dissonance. Like there's a difference between what I think the world should be and what it is, or what I think I should be able to do and what I can do, quote unquote. And a sense of nihilism tied to that, or a sense of like, this thing's fucked. You know what I mean? Like
the idea that there's not much you can do.
There's nothing you can do, right? Climate change. Oh, we're so far fucked. You know what I mean? Sorry for the language.
It's okay.
But like, you know what I mean? Climate change.
We're an hour and 35 minutes in. I don't think
they're
YouTube's
gonna be cool.
Care at this point. I have no idea, but whatever. I honestly don't care. It's fine.
Yeah. But it's like, you know what I mean? Like the issues are so big, right? Like, you know, wars, right? Like, oh, you know, how do I have an impact on the war, right? Or, you know, like I just feel like I can't find a job, or the job that I have is so tough, or like it's impossible to pay for things, or you know what I mean? Like all the pick any issue, right? Crime is a thing, this or that is a thing, like just the sense of what can I do about it? Do you know what I mean? That to me is where I feel like we're having challenges, like, and I feel like the coping mechanisms, again, not a knock, and I've definitely been through my fair share. I still go through my fair share, but like I feel like that's more where society. So going back to the music, I feel like that's what a lot of it is, right? Like I used to smoke a lot of weed, right? I don't anymore.
You
right?
don't have to censor yourself.
Yeah, it's like I always just think like,
it's okay, it's all good.
But like, you know what I mean? Like I used to smoke a lot of weed, right? Like, and I didn't really think it was all, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, fine, probably I'm dealing with some stuff or whatever, but it's like whatever. I'm still doing my things. You know what I mean? I drank a lot, but like, did I think I had a drinking issue? Not really. You know what I mean? Like maybe I drank this whole bottle today. That's cool. Do you know what I mean? It's not that big a deal, right? I know lots of people doing that, right? Moving from that place to like, and not saying that this is a requirement to feel like you can do things, right? But like for me in my path, like going to a place where like I drink lots of water now, right? Like I always drank a lot of water, but like now it's like I'm trying to just optimize for my ability to do things that I felt like a bit more challenging when I did some other things, right? I feel like being in a place where I was spending a lot of my time coping with what I felt like was just a lot, right? It was a little bit easier to feel nothing, right? To kind of be like, yeah, this thing is just whatever. Like, I don't even care. Do you know what I mean? And like nihilism to kind of be funny. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of like the social media content is like, even when we had that boomer phase, like, okay, boomer, or like whatever the content looks like today, right? I feel like there's a lot of times where it's veiled in like, yeah, fine, this might be toxic, but like that is all we have, right? So let's just laugh at that. You know what I mean? And that to me is where I feel like the struggle is. Like it's the beliefs that like, one, there's no way to reconcile what we have versus what we feel we should have, and two, that it's so far gone, you know, either join the train and kind of take what you can get, or like complain and wait for the rapture, right? Like I don't know, do you know what I mean? So I actually feel there's been an uprising, people who are kind of like praying for that, you know, like where it's like, dude, like Jesus Christ, whoever it is, like come back and fix this, you know what I mean? Like save us, this is a mess, you know what I mean? How are we supposed to deal with this, right? Or forget it, get what you can, you know what I mean, before it all comes crashing, you know what I mean? Like we got AI, anyway.
I feel like it's also partly both. I mean, if you look at it from a religious perspective, I feel like a lot of people over the last few years, especially very highly religious people, have been seeing the apocalypse coming now for, you know, a period of time, the end of the world, the coming of Christ, you know, whatever. Every book has a different kind of explanation for it, but there's also kind of like you said, it's either one or the other. Like, do we ask, you know, God to come and save us all, or do we basically prepare for the worst? And I do kind of feel at the end of the day that it's a little bit of both, right? Because we don't exactly know what to expect, right? And it's always kind of like expect the best but prepare for the worst. At the end of the day, it's kind of like buying insurance, right? Expect for the best but prepare for the worst in case it happens. So like, for example, I mean, I'm a big advocate of in the United States you would call it the Second Amendment, right? Owning guns and preparing yourself in the dire moments that you had to actually defend yourself. And I know we had this conversation. I'd love to get into it, but I know we'd probably go for like another hour and a half just on like, you know, political type of stuff, which I would like to do. I actually want you to come back on the show one day and do that. So, but I really wanted to kind of get into like, you know, kind of the first ideas so that way we can all kind of have a good understanding of each other. And I think it's been a fun conversation. There's one, we will eventually do that just because I know you got to go downtown and take care of your shit, right? So no, that's all good. So, but the last thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, I don't know if anybody else had any other things that they wanted to input on the last part of the discussion you just said. Yeah,
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Moshi. But like, the last thing I'd say on that is just like, I catch myself doing this a lot too, so I acknowledge it. But like the come save us, or like, you know, get what you can because it's all coming down, is also to me a bit binary. Like I do think there's more than that, right? Like, so there's like, hey, like I don't even know if any of that's true, so let me just kind of like do what I gotta do. There's an opportunity to be like, hey, like I want to influence it in this way, and I think that's what, you know, I see the Brave podcast is trying to do that, right? Like you're speaking on things, like, you know, with music I'm trying to do that. Like I want to speak on things and like kind of give people that feeling of empowerment, like we can do what we want, you know what I mean? Like nothing's really ending, it doesn't have to, right? But I guess ultimately just, you know, the sense of like, even if we talk about it politically, right? Like red or blue, Democrat, Republican, like liberal, conservative, like not necessarily having to look at things through a classical lens or through like a binary lens or, you know, a dogmatic lens, any sort of lens, but just like at the very least, if using any of these, like using, you know, your own volition, like what do you feel to its logical conclusion, right? So if we're saying like, hey, you know, think the world's about to end, what does that mean to you? Like, what, you know, what does that mean to its logical conclusion? So you're saying like you feel like we're on a train that's about to crash and you want to stay on it, like, or like, you know, what do you feel your role is on that train? Like, why do we have to be on that train? How do you know this is a train? How do you know it's gonna crash? Like, just all these different things where it's like, at least if we're gonna come from these places, which I don't think we have to, but if we're going to, like, I'd love to encourage people, and I'd love to try and encourage myself to just really think about like, what does that mean in all its implications? And am I owning that? Like, am I owning like the full logical conclusion of what that statement means? Right. So yeah, I just think it's powerful to really think about life as more than just like my right and left hand. Like there's just so much more dimensions and opportunity to like, you know, not necessarily just look at what's been presented to me, but like kind of create what I want to see. Yeah.
I feel like more people just have to have simple discussions like this. I mean, we don't always have to agree on every single little thing. And then throw a hissy fit when we don't agree, right? So, and I feel like that's kind of where the world has gone too. It's like if somebody doesn't agree with somebody, like somebody might be calm about it, but the other person might just lose their shit and walk out the door, right? And it happens, and it's just like, why? Like, dude, we're just discussing ideas like we are right now, right? All three of us, I mean, morality wise, I think religiously wise, we're all kind of on the same page, but we don't all follow the exact same doctrine, but we all get along, right? Course, nobody's throwing punches and nobody's disagreeing with each other about any single thing, but for some reason people just can't have a simple discussion anymore, and it is what it is, I guess. But people gotta grow the fuck up.
I think it's a curve, right? Like it's like health. Hopefully, like people get there and iterate. But yeah, definitely, I'm grateful for the fact that we can have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
thank you.
The last thing I guess we'll talk about, because I just really want to bring this up because it's kind of like it just happened, and I've been kind of like vaguely following it. So I've been obsessed with the Titanic.
Yeah.
Ever since the movie came out. So when that movie was in theaters back in, when was it, 97 or something like that?
Jeez, was it that?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's been that long. I saw that movie in theater probably 6 or 7 times because I was obsessed. My mom was obsessed. I was 6 years old, and we just kept going to watch it over and over again.
I always knew that movie. I always knew you to be a huge fan of that movie. Maybe that movie was your favorite movie at the time.
One of.
At the time.
I find myself like the type of person that it's like I don't have a favorite. Like, so somebody asked me, "What's your favorite, music artist or band or whatever?" It's like, oh, I got like a top 5. I don't have like a top 1 of certain things, right? So I guess movies would be one of them. But in terms of the Titanic right now, there's a story, like they just broke the news today that they've actually found, I don't know if have you been following it?
They found debris, right? Or did they find, okay, yeah, that's what I saw. Yeah.
So basically, for those of you who haven't followed what's going on, there was a submersible, sort of like a mini submarine, but it's not actually a submarine, so they call it a submersible. And basically their mission was to go 11 hours below the ocean, 12,500 feet, almost 13,000 feet, to the wreck of the Titanic. And interestingly enough, the CEO of the company is married to the great granddaughter of one of the couples that actually perished on the Titanic. The Strauss family, or the oh man, I might be mixing up the names right now, but it was essentially the family that started Macy's. So if you remember the scene in the movie where there was the old couple and the room is filling up with water and they were holding each other as the room is filling, that was actually supposed to resemble them, who actually passed away on the ship. And the reason why is because the wife refused to leave the husband, so she stayed with him on the ship. Otherwise she would have actually survived, but she decided to stay on the ship with them. And I don't know, it's just such a sad story. Like, you have these 5 people that went down because they wanted to do something, like, to them that was I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, it's an extreme thing to do. Like to have the cojones at the end of the day, I guess we'll say, to have the idea to go almost 13,000 feet to the bottom of the ocean to physically be right in front of the wreck of the Titanic, which is unbelievable. Like, honestly, had somebody told me that was even possible, like that I could pay $250,000 at some point in my lifetime to go and do it, I probably would have done it. Right? Like, that's a lifetime. That's like a crazy bucket list thing, right? Yeah. So I don't know. It's just been I don't know if you guys have been following along at all, but yeah, like you said, they found some more debris today, and they just literally.
Well, today's the day that they broke the news that they found.
Yeah.
So yesterday, the last thing I saw was that they said, they have about 30 hours left of 20 hours left of air or something like that. They haven't heard anything except that a Canadian plane was flying over and they heard sounds from the ocean floor that sounded like knocking, which would have been possibly them knocking inside the submersible. So today it came out that they said that they have detected debris. They found debris floating. Yeah, they confirm.
I have the article here.
Debris being debris from an implosion of the actual submersible under the water. And I watched some like a animated infographic kind of thing of what, based on the pressure down there, what it would have been like, and it's absolutely horrific. It's just the implosion pressure, literally crushing the thing and tearing it to shreds.
Yeah, we have something here that says the missing Titanic-bound submersible containing the 5 crew members has run out of breathable air. The vessel operated by OceanGate Expedition. So this is when they were talking about that it ran out of oxygen.
What time was that? How many hours ago?
I don't even know. I
at the bottom left
up a little while.
It says 12 hours ago, I think.
Yeah, so this is an older article. Hang on, let me see if I can find the other one here. But because they were saying, and then there was another one that I had seen that they had said that the thing literally imploded, which is just insane. One thing that kind of got to me, apparently there's a bunch of people going around on the internet being like, well, they're rich, they fucking deserved it. And I'm like, dude, like, come on, man. It doesn't matter. Like, it's just, I don't know why people. I can't understand why people are like that. Like, dude, like people lost their lives. Like, yeah, okay, they're rich. So what? That doesn't mean anything. It literally doesn't mean, you don't know, you don't even know anything about these people. First of all, how do you even know the CEO of this was rich, right? I don't, like, what?
I think again, first and foremost, like, rest in peace to those that passed.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
God bless them and their families. I think the comments oftentimes come from a place of like pain for those people, or trying to like reconcile what you're reading. You know what I mean? Because it is traumatic stuff that we're seeing daily, right? Like look at this post here, right?
Yeah.
Like it's daily, right? Like you open your feed. At least I find that. I sometimes find it difficult to go online. Is like open Twitter, open Instagram. Like I'm gonna scroll for a few seconds before I hit something that like makes me pause and makes me feel like, wow.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So like that much stimulation of like horror or like real life traumatic situations, right? Like people are going to process that differently.
Oh,
right?
totally.
And I feel like some people process it in a way where it's like, well, let me try and separate it from what might feel like reality, right?
Yeah.
Like this isn't real, this person isn't real. You know what I mean? Whether that's consciously or unconsciously. So yeah, I feel like when I read comments like that, I'm like, yeah, I hear you. And I also just feel like it's trauma, man. Like people are kind of like just trying to process what they're seeing, and you know, how do I deal with this in my life, and still keep scrolling, or
yeah. So I found the article here. It says, breaking, the U.S. Coast Guard says the aircraft detected underwater noises in their search for the missing Titanic tour submarine. These sounds have been reported as banging sounds. So detected underwater. So these are the noises. I don't know why it's like, for some reason Instagram likes to just mix up all my saved stuff.
I have that too.
I don't know where it went. I saved it earlier, but anyways, yeah. So apparently they said they found debris, it was debris that was pretty far away from where the actual wreckage is. But I don't know. For me personally, like I feel like the news is kind of making this huge big deal out of it, and it's like it's not really like breaking headline news, like it's like the end of the world sort of thing, right? But I feel like obviously the media always needs something to talk about, right? So they need something to clickbait. But for me, I just find it interesting because I've always just been, ever since I was a kid, I've just been obsessed with the Titanic. Like I've watched it over 1 billion times. My friend Brent TV, who's the SpongeBob popsicle guy, is absolutely obsessed with it. Like the point that he knows the movie, like the actual script itself, word for word, right? Like he can literally sit there and he can just recite the freaking script of the movie. It's impressive to say the least. But and then when I was a few years ago, actually, I went to the cemetery where a lot of them were buried, which is in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's actually, it's very interesting. They have a grave there from Jay Dawson. Apparently it's Joseph Dawson. So I actually made this video a little while ago, which is all of a sudden getting recommended again after this Titanic thing happened, right? Because obviously people are searching up Titanic and Jack Dawson and whatever, because all this headline news and breaking news and whatever. It's really funny. I'm like, why? I was looking through my like analytics yesterday. I'm like, why is this video all of a sudden getting watched again? Like it's old. Like it shouldn't be getting more than like a few views a day, right? At this point. And all of a sudden it's getting views again. I'm like, well, it's a good video, right? I spoke about the conspiracy theory, which one day I'll probably get into on the podcast, but yeah, it's just I find the Titanic super interesting. I would love to go there. I've been to like multiple museums. I've been to the Maritime Museum in Halifax, which they have a whole bunch of stuff there that they've pulled off of the wreckage. I recently went in Branson, Missouri. They have a museum that looks like the front of the ship. The actual thing is to spec of the front of the ship, and then you go in there. They have everything designed to spec. They have the grand staircase, which was absolutely incredible. The only issue was that I couldn't film. Otherwise I would have been able to vlog the entire experience. But it was like, honestly, dude, it was like one of the coolest things I've ever done. So you walk into this giant looking ship, and then you pay your $50 or whatever, and they give you a card. And it's cool because they give you a card and it says basically your name is this and this, and it shows you like a little picture of the person if they had the picture, and basically you were a person on board the Titanic before it sank, or when it sank, and it tells you a little bit of like a story, like a 3-paragraph thing about you, who your person was. And by the end of the experience, you get to find out what happened to your person after that. But they have all kinds of artifacts, and it's cool because everybody's like dressed up like all the employees are all dressed up as if they were legitimately like working on the ship, whether they were, the captain or somebody who was like a whatever, I guess you would say a stewardess sort of thing. It was just crazy. Like everything was just completely to spec, and it's literally like walking through the actual Titanic itself. All the artifacts are there, like millions upon millions of dollars worth of stuff, and everything has a little bit of a little story to it. There's stories about the musicians at the one of the final scenes of the movie when they're all on the thing and the thing is sinking and everybody's panicking and they're playing the famous music that everybody remembers, like the story about all of them. It was crazy. It was definitely well worth it. I think there's multiple locations now. I remember you sent me one. I think there's one in like New York City now.
Oh, okay.
There's one in Vegas, which is supposed to be haunted, but yeah, I don't know. For me, I've just always been super fascinated by the Titanic. I think it's like one of the most interesting things.
It must be massive. No, sorry, go ahead.
Just such a tragic story.
Yeah.
About the submersible?
Huge.
Yeah.
Both.
Well,
Horrible.
both, yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was just gonna say about the Titanic, like the museum, like that. It must be massive, right? Like
It's a fair size.
Yeah. But it's just the front, like it's the bow. It's not the full. Of course, it's not the full thing, but like,
no.
Yeah, so you're just kind of like touring what the front deck or like the first like ballroom kind of thing. What it looked like.
It's the way I'm trying to remember how they organized it exactly. It was kind of like, it wasn't like a through and through kind of thing.
Got it. Okay.
It just kind of like from the outside, it looked like this giant ship looking thing. Like I did film the outside, so if I were to go back to my vlogs you can see it, but and then on the inside I just remember you kind of like enter this random room thing, and then you walk through a bunch of different little exhibits, and then all of a sudden you're walking into the grand staircase, which was incredible because it's literally designed exactly how the real grand staircase, with like the 24 karat gold paint on like the stair, on the handrails and stuff like that. Like it was pretty incredible. Like the amount of, I'm like, okay, they justified how they charged me $50 to get in here.
You still remember?
Yeah, I'm like this just not cheap, but yeah, so.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
I will say I was watching this one like Instagram video before I got here about like the different depths of the ocean that we've reached like as human beings, and like how 5% of, we believe like we've explored like 5% of like the oceans, like of the waters in the world, and like 95% is uncharted. And it was just really interesting. Like we've the challenge, where is it, the Challenger Point, I'm sure I'm butchering the name, but there's like one specific spot just off of the coast of Guam where it's like the furthest we've seen the depths of the ocean go, but that's based off of 5% of the ocean being explored.
So that would be like the deepest
part we've seen of the ocean, based on like, more like not a human exploring, but just like, machines and bots and things.
As far as we know anyway.
As far as we know of what we've explored, and we've explored 5%. And that Challenger Point is like
Challenger Deep.
That's it.
The depth of 10,900 meters.
Yeah.
Which is like 35,000 feet.
Dude, and that's the
deepest
furthest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like that, for context, they were saying that if you took all of the altitudes that are above like surface level, right? So like Everest, all the like different areas where we've like, where there's elevation in the land, if you took all of those and threw them in the ocean, what was it? The comparison was like, that would only cover, it wouldn't even cover the depth of what is known.
That's
crazy. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So like the ocean, as far as like exploring it, like we've basically charted more of space than we have of the ocean, right? And the challenge being like the PSI, like the pressure, right? Like the pressure as you get deeper and deeper, it's just impossible. Like they were saying that at certain points before you even get to that depth, it would be the pressure equivalent would be like if you had like 70 Boeing jets stacked on top of you, right? Or like an elephant standing on a stamp. Like it's just like it's not even comprehensible how difficult it would be to withstand that pressure. So like
that's insane.
Yeah, and there are living things that are there, right? Like these really like
giant squids.
Like, but the squids actually don't even go that deep. Like they go deep, but there are things that go deeper, right? There's some pretty wild fishes and stuff
crazy
like that.
whales. I can only imagine. Like, who even knows what the hell is down there? Things we don't even know, like, it actually exists that we've never actually been able to do research on before, right? Like, I think
Atlantis.
Atlantis.
And Ariel's down there.
Exactly, right? But I mean, for me, like, on land mass, I think the highest thing that I've ever done was like 12,500 feet, which was it's called Sandia Crest in New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, that makes that, if you're afraid of heights, that thing makes you shit your pants 100%. So so I know Michael's got to go. Unfortunately, he's got to meet someone in like half an hour to take care of some music business
for the show.
For the show.
Venue
so
and prep some stuff,
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you very much, man. I feel like I've learned so much.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Well, man, I appreciate being
we definitely want to have you back on the show at some point and discuss some more interesting stuff. We'll go a little bit more in depth into, obviously other topics and things like that we find interesting. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, for joining us here in our studio. Smash that like button. Don't forget to share this out with your friends. Subscribe, turn those notifications on if you guys are new here, and we will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.